Hey there, We Can't Wrestle podcast listeners. If you haven't noticed, we have switched our server to Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Highly recommended by me and everybody else here at the We Can't Wrestle podcast.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. I'm Nate Maxon, your host. This is a special edition of the show that actually wasn't supposed to happen. I was going to do maybe a 30-minute interview with a good friend of mine, Archie Mitchell, who is a member of the Era Facebook group, a wrestling figure collecting and customizing group. We were gonna do about a 30-minute interview, and this turned into a 3-hour conversation, a fantastic conversation. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this a special edition of the show instead of this being an interview segment, obviously, or the next show would be 7 hours long. So that's what's going on here. Special edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast that I'm calling Erasponsible. And I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much, Archie, for a fantastic conversation. I had a great time speaking with you, sir, and hope to have you on the show again. And to remind you, there will be the actual real episode that was supposed to come out this week as well. So we'll have 2 episodes this week. Aaron and I are going to review WCW Bash at the Beach 2000 this week. Oof. And we're going to talk about our top 10 favorite musical artists of our generation, or bands, musical artists or bands of our generation, which we kind of qualified that as stuff between bands and artists probably between 1985 and the year 2000. So we're going to have that as well. So there will be 2 episodes of the show this week, and here's the first one, my conversation with Mr. Archie Mitchell on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. All right, wrestling fans, here on the We Can't Wrestle podcast, Nate here with you, and to open up the show this week, a good friend of mine, Mr. Archie Mitchell. And I know those of you that have listened to the show have heard me mention the past, month or so, a group on Facebook called The Era, which I am a card-carrying member of, literally, because the first time I was introduced to the Era, Patrick Mansonetti gave me a card.
Yep.
So I am literally a card-carrying member of the Era. Archie, welcome to the We Can't Wrestle podcast family.
Thank you for having me, Nate. It's a pleasure to be here, and I would like to reiterate that Nate is definitely a VIP member in the Era. We love having him. He is one of our best members, definitely a good friend, and someone that I enjoy talking to about a number of things throughout the day or week as it goes by.
Well, I really appreciate that. And you join this group because I'm telling you folks, it's not just about collecting, which,
No.
we all love collecting, but it's about brotherhood, wrestling fans coming together. I'm friends with Archie and we've never met in person. It's just the beauty of social media. As an example, there's a member of the group, Jamin Wooten, whose wife is currently battling breast cancer. And the group, through a raffle this past week, actually raised over $1,000 to go toward their GoFundMe. That's an amazing thing, Archie.
And I'm not boasting about the group in any way, but it's not the first time that we've done it. Way back when we all first started, we did one for Brutus the Barber Beefcake when he had he needed a leg surgery, and we raised over $1,600 over a week's time. We did it also for our brother who passed away, Rex Backus, who was an amazing admin and a great friend to all of us. He passed away a few months back, but we did another raffle for him. and one of our members and other admin, Rodney Lewis Freeman, donated $1,000 from himself because felt he was paying Rex back for something he did for him way back in the past.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And to do what we did for Jamin in one day. And again, I'm not boasting. We take no one. We don't want a round of applause. We don't want anybody to say you guys did great. It's not about that.
Mm-hmm.
See that we put the event up at 1:00 in the afternoon. Pat Mansonetti posted it, and by 7 there was $1,000 raised. $1,000 raised, and we were like, wow, because our members stepped up and said, you know what? It's not about the money, and it's not about a prize. It's about helping out a fellow member, brother, and someone we've known for now over 2 years to maybe fix something that he couldn't because insurance isn't covering it, or, well, I don't want to have to worry about going into my pocket,
Exactly, and that's just what I'm saying. It's you join something. I mean, honestly, my first interaction with the Era, it was at a Heroes and Legends wrestling event in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yep.
And Pat was at a booth at
that was the
first
edition of Era Live, as Pat and Petey call it, because it was the first time the Era had a booth in any event.
And it was awesome. And I bought a fucking Warlord MOC from Pat. But I mean, that was my introduction to it. And then getting into that, at first you're like, oh, this is just, something I can do to get some wrestling figures or whatever. And then as time goes on, again, you form bonds with people, and
right.
And you find out that we have a common interest, but we also, we're humans and we're friends.
It's not just toys. We're people who want to interact with each other because, well, maybe I'm having a bad day, and maybe, like, just to use as a for instance, I'm having a sucky day, and Nate messages me out of the clear blue sky and goes, hey, buddy, what's up? And then we start talking, and then my day gets better because I interacted with someone who isn't pissing me off at that moment, or isn't
exactly
setting me, or adding to the problem. He's taking away from it. If Pat has a thing that he said, and I love this. I wish we could put it on a T-shirt, which we could. That says, "The Era is my escape."
Mm-hmm.
It's still reality, but you're not dealing with the outside world. You're dealing with the thousands of members in the group. And maybe there's a butthead who comes along and says something stupid, but then there's like 20 people telling them, chill out. We're all here to be friends.
Well,
you know what I mean? We're here to be human, like you said.
You just made something pop into my head. Maybe ERA stands for Escape Reality Anytime.
I love it. Nate, I love it. I'm going to have to talk to Beat Art about that, putting it on the shirt.
So what was...
My
go ahead.
First couple of weeks in any group, I met a gentleman by the name, which I'm not sure if you've seen him in the group or not, Nate, Rick Castronova.
Yeah.
And Rick, I messaged him about some figures, and he gave me a great deal on a Ric Flair and a Hulk Hogan Hasbro loose. I'm a big Ric Flair mark, so anything Ric Flair was like, oh wow. But those were the first 2 figures I purchased because I'd gone in my basement. My son wanted some of his old wrestling toys to see if he could sell them or whatever, because he was a teenager now and he didn't care about them anymore. And I saw that I had a Sergeant Slaughter, a Yokozuna, and a HBK in white pants Hasbro. Okay. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even know I had these. So my brother's like, hey, give me that Yokozuna. So I gave it to him because he still had his and he didn't have a Yokozuna. But he's like, join the groups. So I did. And I met Rick. He sells me Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. And he's like, if you ever want cheap figures that aren't in great shape or even in mint condition, whatever you want, hit up Petey Gleason. So I see Petey make a post later on that day. I messaged Petey, and all I said was as a joke, I'm like, hey, you're Petey. And his exact response back was the one and only. That's all he said back.
That's exactly what I would expect.
I'm like, Rick told me to hit you up. He's like, yeah, I live in Mountain Olive, New Jersey, if you want to come down in a couple of days and look for what I got. So I did. I took my son with me because, it's scary meeting people online. You don't know who, going to somebody's house, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
so
like a Craigslist kind of thing,
Yeah, exactly. There's too many horror stories. But then I realized, wow, forget about the horror stories. This is a great, these are great people. There's no one's looking to kill me over a $10 wrestling figure. So I bought like 4 or 5 figures from Petey, and then he put me in another group. And then I originally joined W Figs, and then I joined Golden Era. And then I joined another group called the Asylum, and just like 4 or 5 groups. And then I got involved in the raffles, which are addicting.
Yes, they are.
funny thing was, I think it was like my third raffle. I put like $2 in it. It was one spot, and I won. And like everybody's making a big deal, like, wow, he won on one spot. And I'm like, yeah, I'm freaked out too. I didn't think I was supposed to win right now. And I picked a Yokozuna with the white stripe, the Series 11. And my son's like, wow, you got back the Yokozuna you gave to your brother, to Uncle Angelo. And I'm like, yeah, I did. I'm like, but that one was red. And he's like, oh, well, then I don't like this one. I'm like, but this one's more valuable. He's like, I don't care. I'm like, well, you sold all the other ones anyway. He's like, I don't care. If you're going to have Hasbro's, you got to have the red Yokozuna. I'm like, okay. So I ended up popping $35 to buy the red Yokozuna back from somebody else. And then it just snowballed. Yeah. It became winning raffles. Then it became buying from people. Then you meet people who want to trade. And then you meet people who want to, just are like, hey, do you need this? Because I don't need it. And if you have something I need in a few months down the road, then you'll hook me up. And it's like, wow, this is not just about toys. It's not just about making money. It's not a marketing scheme. It's people willing to help people because, well, I just got back into the collecting world, or I'm a first-time buying kind of guy, and we all share that experience. So why not help each other out?
I listen to a lot of the podcasts that are from some like the old school guys,
Right.
And the way I look at this, and I kind of look at it like if you listen to them talk about those old tape trading days,
right?
Where they would trade, New Japan tapes or something because everybody had, not everybody had access to that or what have you, or territory tapes or whatever.
Exactly.
It's kind of the same thing to me. It's a brotherhood of people that have a common bond and a common interest and can like you said, make somebody else's day by being a part of this.
You get some people like I'm 38 years old and I've now been doing this 3 years. So I started back up at 35, having not bought an action figure or a wrestling figure in over at least 22 years because I stopped when I was 12 or 13. But then you get some guys who are in their early 20s and they have a good job, but they can't spend 40 or 50 a figure or even 10 or 20 a figure. And they're like, okay, who could help me out with this or and maybe there's like a guy like me or Petey or Pat or even you who have 4 Macho Man S1s, with the orange tights that are going to go, you know what? I don't need 4. Here's one, take it and send it to that. And then that kid pays it forward.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean? It's not, you don't see, that's the one thing that I love about these groups and especially the era. It's not just a bunch of people looking to get free stuff and then turn around and disappear. No. You help somebody out and then they turn around and help 20 other people out and then those 20 go help 100 out. So it's just a nice effect of everybody helping each other to move their collections along. And I'm sure you've seen it. I know there's probably a ton of people who see it and they say the word scalper because somebody buys a $20 figure and tries to sell it for 100 and then, but for every one scalper, as they say, there's 20 other people behind them looking to sell the figure just to get back what they spent for it, and help that person out.
Yes, absolutely.
Or even a story recently, Dan Gleason, who's a member in the era and one of my close friends as well, sent me a Liv Morgan out of the clear blue sky because he knew I wanted it. And when I asked him what do I owe you, he said, you don't owe me anything.
Right.
You get that. You get people who just send out birthday presents for no reason or a Christmas present or just it's Monday and I felt like sending you something. I knew you wanted it.
Well, that's another thing you do in the era that I love is the toy hunting. If somebody in the group is looking for a certain figure, Archie's going to go out when he's hunting for his own figures.
Right.
And he's going to find, if I'm looking for Ronda Rousey Elite with holding the contract on the clipboard, Archie's going to try to find it for me.
It seems like I find more of those every day because Ronda Rousey is not being bought unless it's the Ultimate Edition, which is $30.
Right.
So, yeah, but see, the toy hunting, I have to give credit where it's due. A young man who I follow on Instagram and in the groups is a friend of mine named Justin Oliver, who does amazing custom work. If you guys are ever looking for customs and don't want to buy them from me, Justin Oliver is known as the Unboxed Alliance on Instagram, and he does amazing elites and basics and Storm collectible customs. He was doing toy hunting on Instagram on his live stream. And I said, well, that seems like a cool idea, but instead of doing it live, because there's obviously You might have a malfunction, or the camera might not be great, or something might not be working in the store, or you might slip and fall. You never know.
Right.
I said, why not video when I go out and look for toys? I'm doing it anyway, and see who needs what. You know what I mean? And that really came about because all of us admin, there's 10 of us in the era, always help each other out. If we're out toy hunting, or we just decide to go to Walmart to grab beer or soda or whatever, and we see something we know the other one needs, we'll hit each other up and go, hey, do you need this? So we extended that into, I'm out toy hunting. If anybody needs anything, leave a comment and tell me who needs what. Because, again, it's not about making money, because it's going to cost the person either $15.88 for an Elite or $20 for an Elite, and then at least $10 to ship, whatever it's going to. But we're saving them money on gas. We're saving them the heartbreak of going out on a hunt and not finding it. Because, look, you've watched the episodes. I miss out 4 or 5 times before I hit something.
Yeah, and how many AJ Nakamura combo packs can we find at TJ Maxx?
If I see one more Goldberg retro at Target, or one more Finn Balor Elite from like 8 series ago in any of the store, I'm gonna scream, because it's ridiculous. My wife asked me to go to Target earlier because like all the Halloween stuff was on 99% off. And I'm like, how could they put things at 90? That's like everything's going to be a penny. She's like, yeah, we need to go. So I went. And of course, me being a toy hunter, I have to go in the toy aisle. And I walk through the wrestling aisle, and there is a Spotlight Elite Jinder Mahal staring me directly in the face. Now, I don't like Jinder Mahal, so I didn't want to buy it. But I looked at it, and she came by and said, why are you looking at that figure like it's hurting your feelings? I said, because that means the other 3 were here. And that means the other Elites that came out with those were here as well. But I'm here late, and Jinder Mahal is mocking me right now.
Yeah, or like me, I'm in retail management for my real job. My company, I'll see a box come off the truck, and it says WWE Mattel, and I'm like, oh, good. And then I open it up, and it's the same, Series 65 that we've gotten the past, 20 weeks or whatever. It's like, God, you can't. How many of these figures do we need? And now they're sitting on the shelf, and nobody wants them, and I don't know. And then you order from Ringside Collectibles, and your box is damaged, and
and unless you buy the case that goes with it, and that costs more to ship and more to get the case.
Yes.
And then eBay is a hit or miss, because you never know who might scam you out of money and not send the item or whatever. And then that's why I'm a loose collector almost to the T, because I don't want to have the heartbreak of, oh God, I just bought a 1, 2, 3 kit MOC and it came dented or broken. Or it's those things go for a lot of money. So if I'm paying that much, it better be in pristine condition.
Well, and that's exactly why I've honestly narrowed a lot of what I do as a collector to groups like the Era or the Asylum, mostly the Era and the Asylum, honestly.
Right.
Because I know that you or Dunk or Pat or David Gold over at the Asylum or Nick Francis, they're going to take care of me. They're not going to send me a piece of shit. They're not, they're going to make sure
send you a picture and show you what everything looks like before you even get it, because we want you to know, well, there's a hairline crack or bend, and even though you really want it, we want you to know you're not getting, it's not going to get messed up more. It's what it is.
Yep. And so like you said, some scalper on eBay, use that word, some scalper on eBay is going to say, I've got a green card Billy Gunn MOC, but he's not going to tell me, like you said, about the crack under the foot. He's not going to take a picture of that shit.
No, of course not. And if he does, he's doing it so you don't do a chargeback or don't go through eBay and screw up his rating. And even then, he's still charging full value.
Yes.
You look at values of these things, and or you said Billy Gunn, an S11 Billy Gunn in mint condition goes for $200. Mm-hmm. Now, if he's charging $150 because it has a crack or a dent or a bend, okay, he subtracted $150. But if he's charging $200 and has all those ailments, then you sold me, a lemon in so many.
Yeah.
And your only way of getting out of it is, well, it wasn't like that when I sent it to you. Well, I'm sorry, I don't think the post office is that horrible.
Right.
They're bad. The post offices can be the devil when they want to be, but they're not going to kick my box down the street and get it to me.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So my next question for you, sir, as a collector, what? And I know what mine is, and I'll reveal to the listeners. Well, anybody that listens to this show knows already. But what is your favorite series of wrestling figures?
I would have to say the S8 Hasbro red cards. The Cloaked Undertaker, the Red Yokozuna that I mentioned, the Silver Shades Brett with that was the first Brett that had the skull with the wings on it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Mr.
Luger.
Perfect, Lex Luger, and I'm not a diehard Lex Luger fan, but just something about the red cards. I know there's a lot of people like Dave Duncan. You mentioned him, love the green cards. Patrick Manzanetti is just a fan of like impossible to get MOCs. You know what I mean? Something with an era or something
Marty
with a problem.
And Marty Jannetty's, by the way.
Jannetty's, yeah, he loves his Marty Jannetty's. But for me, those red cards, something about the red and the way the figure looked on that card is unbelievable.
I agree on that, and that's my favorite. And you talked earlier about your first raffle win was on one spot. My first raffle win was in the era. It was on two spots, and I won a red card narcissist from Dave.
Yes, so, I think I remember that. That was about almost a year ago.
Yes,
no, more than a year ago, because the Indiana show just passed that you mentioned you met Pat at. So yeah,
and that's my favorite series too. And to talk about the other group that just to shout out to the other group that Archie and I are both a member of, the Asylum. I actually have a 85% rated AFC figure Undertaker red card from John Majewski that I won in a raffle. That is a figure that if I wanted to sell it on eBay, straight up, folks, I could probably get $800 for it.
Oh, without a doubt.
I won that figure for $20 on a raffle.
Damn.
It's like, wow, it's
now,
amazing.
See, to me, that's like having money in the bank because, and God forbid, but if something were to happen, you could at least get $500 or $600.
You know what's funny, Archie? I tell my kids all the time, Dad's a retail manager. There's a little bit of savings, but when I croak, you kids can pawn this collection and support your
kids. Tell
them
to look up Patrick Manzanetti in the era. He'll buy it all for a reasonable price, too.
Yes.
No, it's funny you mentioned John Majewski. I won a red card Undertaker from him as well. It's not graded, but he was holding a raffle in a prior group that he was a member of and an admin in. We won't mention any names, though, because that group got a lot of flack after a little while because of its owner.
Okay.
But John was holding a raffle, and the winner got either a red card Brett or the red card Undertaker with a bunch of loose Hasbros. And for some reason, I just was compelled before it closed to buy 5 spots. It was $2 a spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot about it. I think I went like 2 days without even looking at the board or seeing what was going on. And he messages me. He's like, dude, congrats. I'm like, congrats on what? He's like, you won. I'm like, what the hell did I win, John? Don't be coy. What did I win? He's like, you won the raffle you bought the last 5 spots in that you closed. I'm like, you're joking. He's like, no, go look. So I watched the video. I'm like, wow, $10. Now, the red card Brett is worth $350 to $400, and the Undertaker is worth $350 to $400. But again, me being a loose collector, I'm like, give me the red card Undertaker and the loose Hasbros. He's like, sure, no problem. He sent it. It got. I thought it was a day, but it was 2 days that it got there in. And this thing was in pristine shape.
Mm-hmm.
For a 20-year-old toy, I was expecting there to be at least one bend, but I mean, it was almost completely straight. And I looked at this thing, and my dad walked in the door. He came over to see me. He's like, hey, what'd you get there? I'm like, this is a $400 figure, and I'll never forget it. My father looked at me and said, you spent $400 on a toy?
Judgment.
And I said, no. I said, I want it for 10. He's like, oh, well, that's even better. Wait a minute. Mind you, though, my father is a collector as well, only he collects the old G.I. Joes, the big ones that used to come out in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So after he was happy, I looked at him and I said, why would you even think of judging what I did, though? I know you have $200 and $300 G.I. Joes that you paid for.
I I have a very good friend of mine. That's funny. I have a very good friend of mine that he actually sells that old GI Joe stuff, and
Okay.
it's crazy. It's crazy
Oh
that
yeah.
the amount of like a little MP helmet from one of those figures can go for like
Okay.
$300. It's
You,
insane.
you were I was just about my dad and my uncle went partners on a $50 lot on eBay.
Uh huh.
And an MP helmet and a telephone. You know those old army phones where they're
Yeah.
on a box?
Yeah.
They found them in the bag. And my uncle's like, let me take these home and research them. I got a feeling they're worth something. So like 3 days goes by, and my uncle walks in with with a white envelope in his hand and hands it to my father. My dad's like, "What is this?" He's like, "That's your half." My dad's like, "Half of what?" He's like, "The MP helmet was worth 300, and the toy phone was worth 600.
Yeah. It's fucking insane.
You got 450 in that envelope." My dad's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he's like, "I almost feel bad that we only paid the guy $50." My uncle's like, "Don't worry
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
it."
If he's not smart enough to research it, fuck him.
I looked at my father. I'm like, wow. And this was before I'm collecting. I'm not into anything right now. And when they talk about GI Joe stuff, I'm like, yawn. I don't,
Right.
you know. I mean, I liked the little small GI Joes when I was younger, the ones that came out from Hasbro and all that. But those big ones are like too complicated. You need everything, and it's got to have this and flock the hair. But when I heard 950, I'm like, Jesus Christ, what the hell just happened?
Maybe I should start liking these. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I tried to get into them, and I almost bought a lot, and I'm like, Dad, is this any good? And he's like, no. I'm like, why? He's like, because it's fodder, and that was the first time I ever heard that word used. And I said, what's fodder? And he said, it's basically it's like you have 5 figures there, but only 2 of them will make one real figure,
Right.
and the rest is just pieces you're gonna like sell or part out to get one other figure or whatever. I'm like, okay. And I just shut my mouth and I didn't say anything and I left it alone. I never looked again. And then I got involved in customizing the Hasbros and the retros. And the guy said, do you want that fodder lot? And I said, Jesus Christ, I'm back where I started with my father. Wait a minute.
And that I was about to say that's a beautiful segue to my next question.
Okay.
Was I wanted to get into your customizing. And,
Okay.
If you want to tell the folks about your customs and
Well-
I'll have a couple questions along the way, but if you want
Sure.
to tell the listeners about your customs and how they can get a hold of you, what you customize, feel free, whatever you got to say.
Before I started collecting, I was following I believe it's Hasbro Maniacs on Instagram, which is Danny Cage.
Yes,
who
Danny
runs
Cage. I am a member of his Facebook group. Yes.
Yes. Very nice guy. Always used to, answer my comments whenever I would ask him a question or something. The first thing I ever saw him do was the NWO Hulk Hogan Hasbro. He took a normal S1 Hogan and made it look phenomenal, like if it was like it came out that way. And I went, wow, I'd love to try to do something like that one day. And then I got into the collecting and everything like that, and I had, my collection. I was at like 20 or 25 Hasbros, and then I think it might have been Petey. Yeah, it was Petey Gleason, admin in the era, good buddy of mine, guy that I've hung out with 10 times, eaten pizza with at least 5 of those times. And he sent me, he said, I'm going to send you a box of fodder. I'm like, okay. I know what it means, but I'm thinking there's got to be at least 2 or 3 in there that are salvageable that I, can put in my collection. And there was. There was a Demolition Crush. There was a Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and he sold me an Owen Hart, which was absolutely mint. And then underneath that was a bunch of rubble. I mean, arms, legs, bodies, heads, you name it, everything was taken either apart or falling off. But I knew that was what it was going to be because he told me it was fodder.
Right.
So I found a second generation Hulk Hogan, the one with it's Hulkaplex.
Yes, the arms extended with the fists.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. So I took out black paint and I painted the shirt and the pants and made the boots white, and I went, wow, this is actually coming out okay. And then I did the bandana and I did the NWO symbol, which I used logos back then, decals, and it was easier to do than pan painting.
Right.
But then I realized, well, an NWO logo is just spray paint, so technically it could look like crap and no one would even say anything because that's what the NWO logo is. It was a shoddily painted, sketch. Okay, but I did the logos and they came out good, and then I posted it in Golden Era and on WFigs. And Danny Cage messages me and said, "Mate, that looks incredible. It looks almost as good as mine." And I said, "Wow, talk about the ultimate compliment from the guy you want it from."
Right, absolutely, yeah.
It's like one of your heroes telling you done good. So it's like, okay. And then someone made me an offer on it. And of course the offer fell through because they were just a window shopper and whatnot. But, they said, I'll give you $50 for it. I'm like, wow, okay. Well, I don't think I want to sell these. I'm doing it for myself. And I didn't think my work was anything that great. So I didn't want to, sell somebody something that they would end up later on looking at and going, why did I spend $50 on this piece of shit? You know what I mean? I'm just tough on myself like that.
Oh, I'm the same way. I'm the same way about my podcast. I go, I think that was a really good show, and then I listen to it. I'm like, God, I hope my listeners like this show.
But see, then you end up looking at how many people actually listened to it, and you're like, wow, people actually liked what I was saying, at least if they listened.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, and that's, again, an ultimate compliment. I used to do a podcast like 5 or 6 years ago with 5 friends of mine, and after our third show, we looked at iTunes and we had 1,000 views, and I went, Jesus Christ, people really want to listen to us?
Right, exactly, yeah.
We're talking about our top 5 favorite movies and diners. We're not talking about rocket science. Why are they even listening right now? And then someone left a comment and said, I listened to your 4 episodes because they were an hour and a half long. I listened to your 4 episodes on my car ride to Florida, which was 12 hours long, and you guys made the road seem smaller. And I went, wow.
Yeah.
You don't realize that you're doing something that people will actually like. But
I have guys message me all the time that work like factory jobs where they're welding all night or what have you, and my podcast at times, because I'm a fucking blabbermouth, can be a little bit long, and my brother who's my co-host is a blowhard, so it can be a little bit long, and I have guys message me and say, dude, your podcast makes my shift go faster.
Right.
And that's like you said, that's a compliment. That's why we do what we do. It's a labor of love. Podcasting isn't a money-making business, folks. I promise you that.
Unless you get signed to one of those companies that put you on everything, then you're making
Podcast One might let me in a decade. But but back to your story. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off, Arch.
Well, no, the weirdest compliment I ever got from somebody when I did the podcast with my friends was, my wife and I listened to you while we're in bed. And I thought, well, wait a minute. What does he mean exactly?
You do have a silky smooth voice, my friend.
I was actually the one, I took a step back in a few episodes because I felt I was talking too much. And I let, the 4 other guys do whatever they were doing. And he's like, my wife and I can't wait every week to listen to you in bed. And I'm like, wow, I don't know if this is good, bad, what, And I just left it at that.
It reminds me of that story that Tommy Dreamer. If you've ever seen the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD,
yes.
And Tommy's talking about all the audition tapes people sent to him, and the guy, the guy that they sent him the video of the guy killing a possum or whatever. It's like, Jesus Christ, what is going on out there?
Right. What am I promoting right now exactly? So I again, like I said, the Hogan came out decent in my opinion, but others liked it, and then I made a Terry Funk, and because Terry Funk is my absolute idol, someone that I've loved for many years, and my son jokes that he's probably going to pass away before I get a chance to meet him, and that's probably true because the 2 times he was supposed to come to New Jersey, he got pneumonia.
Oh God.
And he missed the 2 places I was supposed to meet him at, so it might be true, but as time went on, I was making figures and doing, and then I met Matthew DaCosta, who's also an admin in the era, and by far one of the finest customizers I've ever met. He makes these things look spot on to Hasbro's. There's not you would swear that Hasbro made them or that he worked for them. That's how great they come out with the paint job and the way the paint looks on the skin. It doesn't look like, oh, well, this was messed with or someone, fixed it. No. Matt gets it done cleanly. I own a few of his customs in HBK black pants that he did, but as the prototype with the punching arm and not the two fists.
Right.
And a Kurt Angle, and I have one other. I can't remember which one it is. And Matt gave me a couple of tips, and then it just continued to snowball from there. And my first custom I ever sold was trying to remember, what was it. First custom I ever sold was a Macho Man Randy Savage I made in blue jeans and a purple shirt with the cream of the crop shirt that he wears with those sunglasses. And I actually raffled it in the era, and it filled in like 6 minutes. And I was like, Jesus, is this really this good? And I was blown away. And the guy who got it raved and asked me to make something else. And then other people, and it was just like, okay, so this is slightly profitable because obviously you have to invest money in order to do this.
Right.
And I found out the most expensive part of customizing was not a body, was not an accessory. It was the heads. Because if you want, like, for instance, I have right now like 18 heads to Daniel Ariola, who is a admin in Asylum, and again, one of the best customizers I've ever met. Him and Matt DeCosta are neck and neck. Daniel pulls out amazing customs of other people, not just wrestlers. He could make a custom of you, Nate. He's made one of me.
Did he just? I was just on scrolling earlier, and it was honestly while John was doing Deal or No Deal, so I wasn't like hardcore paying attention to who was posting. But did he just make the yes, the Captain Spaulding?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Sickening, right? It's like amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Swear it's that guy, you know, that from the movie. It's the character from A House of a Thousand Corpses. It's amazing.
Yes.
And I sent him a bunch of heads to have them copied because to buy those kind of things, you know, to have someone make you a resin, you know, mold or whatever, you're talking anywhere from $20 to $100.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan Gleason, again, one of our buddies, just bought Ole Anderson heads for myself and him, and they were $15 a piece. But the reason they were so cheap is because it took 10 people to buy one each to make up for the $150 it was going to cost to make that plaster mold and then make the heads. So if I would have just wanted to buy one, it would have cost me $150 just for one Ole Anderson head, because they've never made an Ole Anderson head.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say to anyone listening. And those of you that are in the groups have probably seen the picture because I like to show it off. But Archie actually sold me a Bobby the Brain Heenan custom for my Hasbro collection, which
I've ever made.
By the way, is center. Because I have a Heenan family now. You know, it's great, and the custom head is fantastic. The figure's fantastic, and I know for a fact that it probably was not easy to make it. It probably was not cheap to make it. But Archie gave me an amazing deal on it because, again, and I hate to keep I don't hate to keep going back to this, but I know I keep harping on this. This is not a business; it's a family.
No, exactly. Look, if I were trying to pay my bills with this, I'm sure I'd be shrewder. But like you said about your podcast, and then you have your normal job in retail, I have a normal job as well. And I always try to tell the people, you know, I call them clients, but it's mostly friends because, you know, I've only had a couple of people I've never met ever or talked to reach out to buy, you know, customs from me. I always tell my friends and clients, you know, I need at least 2 to 3 weeks, but then I end up getting it done sooner. But that's only because you don't know what your schedule is going to be like. You know?
Well, and that is the same as that's just plain, honest to God, good customer service and caring about your customer. Because that's what I do in retail. If I need to order something, and I know that I might have it in a week, I'm going to tell you, Archie, give me 2 to 3 weeks for this piece of furniture, and if I have it in a week. Well, damn, you're super satisfied. But I didn't tell you a week, and then my company screws it up, and it's 3 weeks, and you're pissed.
Exactly.
You know, and you don't have a couch now because you sold your couch because you thought I was going to have it in a week.
I just bought my kids a new bed because I was fixing their bedroom, and the guy said, "Oh, I'll have it in 4 days." He ends up getting the wrong bed in 4 days. Tells me, "Well, I could give you this one, but it'll be an extra $200." You know what I mean? Or wait an extra 2 weeks now so I can get the real. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, you'll never go there again.
No, now I told them I want free delivery, and you better be here in 2 weeks, or else I want my full refund back. It's like
Absolutely, yeah.
my kids are sleeping on air mattress right now because he misled me. But like you said, I'll never go back there again. I know better.
Hmm.
But the Bobby Heenan that I made for you, I the thing I always felt Hasbro missed out on was a manager line.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I
You know,
absolutely
who
that
wouldn't have loved a Mr. Fuji or
shit
a Bobby Heenan?
I thought that when I was 12, not just at
Right.
41.
No, as a kid,
And,
yeah, it's like you have Andre the Giant, but you don't have Bobby Heenan to be
mhm.
next to him. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
I have the Mountie, but I don't have Jimmy Hart. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Who wouldn't have liked to have them all three members of Demolition with Mr. Fuji in the
Oh,
middle of them with the war paint on,
hell
or next
yes.
to Powers of Pain, or even a Slick, which they had the body types for them. I mean, a Slick could have just been $1 million man, only a little bit taller.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't that hard. But and then the other thing that Hasbro missed out on was making a female line, and that's something I've been doing more and more of.
Hmm.
Is making the female customs because they're a little easier, not much, but here's a trick of the trade to anybody who's having trouble making female figures. There are two sets of legs that can be used to make a female figure. Rick Rude, because he's the cheapest Hasbro that there is when it comes to buying them.
That was going to be my next question was how do you, with no females in the line ever, how do you make a female figure?
Well, the first thing you do is you buy either a basic or a elite female figure.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest a basic because they're cheaper. And I have one rule that I set for myself in all of customizing. I will not break a $20 figure or higher.
Okay.
So if I didn't get it for $3 or $4, in a custom lot, or $10 for a basic, and I had to give the 20 on a Cassius Ono that just came out, I'm not busting that up. That's staying MOC and not being touched.
Mm-hmm.
So like for instance, I just made a Sonya Deville, and the basic Sonya Deville was on sale at Five Below for $5, so I bought it and cracked the legs off to get her down to her waist. You shave the waist down a bit, and then I used a pair of jumper retro legs, because those are the skinniest legs in the retro line. And I'm not ashamed to say it. I used a Goldberg pair of retro legs.
Uh-huh.
Because she's a fighter, an MMA fighter. She does have a little bit thicker of legs, and the pants actually worked out good to just paint them a different color and put her on that waist, and then put her skirt around it. But then I've made other custom female, like I made my first Becky Lynch with a pair of Rick Rude legs, and painted those black, and then I added the skin tone, and then put the fishnet stockings with a fine brush. But like I said, Rick Rude legs or a pair of jumper legs from either Hasbro or Retro work perfect for the female figures, as long as they wear pants, obviously, or some kind of outfit that doesn't require the full leg to be showing.
Right.
So it's not as hard to do a female figure because it's pretty much just a couple of cracks and then putting the torso onto the legs and whatnot. But then when you look at the finished product, it looks like, wow, why couldn't Mattel do this right now?
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Why weren't they thinking in the same, forward thinking? And you look at it from this point of view with wrestling, the females have kind of taken over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they be looking to make retros? Because you have the Barbie doll female wrestlers now. You make every basic and elite female wrestler, Asuka and Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose and all them. Why wouldn't you do a retro now? Or they're doing the He-Man line that's coming out soon. Why wouldn't you do females? Because there were females in He-Man, in the He-Man toy line.
How about Tila?
Right. Right, exactly.
Well, and
She-Ra, it's...
That's one of the biggest things in groups like ours now is but one of the biggest things I'm pissed off is why no more retros? I don't understand that decision. I guess I just don't get it.
I don't either. And they could blame it on that they didn't make enough. Maybe they weren't selling, but you have to put the damn things out for sale.
Yes.
Series 1 and 2, Walmart exclusives. Great, no problem. I wasn't into collecting when those came out yet, though.
Uh-huh.
So I caught it at the ending when Walmart put them all on sale for $250. But the only ones that were actually still left on the shelf were Austin and Ultimate Warrior.
Right.
So everything else sold. Okay, so Series 1 and 2 were a success. Series 3 was a Target exclusive. Well, guess what? Series 3 is still in Target. You could go there and find an AJ Styles or a Goldberg on the peg at any day of the week.
Yep.
And it's 2 years later.
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know if in the history of me from 5 years old to now, I don't know if I've ever seen a figure more commonly on a shelf than that Goldberg Retro.
Right.
Good God.
And it's still marked at $13. It doesn't have like a $3 clearance tag on it.
Right, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yet I can go to Marshall's and find all of Series 8 and 9 for $4 and $5. It's like, wait, Target values Goldberg more than Marshall does Braun Strowman?
Right.
You know what I mean? Who's newer? It's like, and then you look at the way the rest of the series rolled out. 4, 5, and 6 barely hit Kmart, supposedly, which I only saw Series 5 in Kmart one time, and I bought Bray Wyatt and Sting. But then they all hit 5 below.
I don't remember what series he was, but I'm going to tell you, there was, God, I can't remember what series he was. You'll tell me. You'll know. But in my entire area, I live in a small town in Ohio.
Okay.
So 30 miles east of me is a town called Lima, Ohio. 30 miles west of me is a town called Fort Wayne, Indiana, which, so when my wife and I go shopping, we live in this podunk town, so usually we go shopping when we go out to dinner or what have you, we go to either Lima or Fort Wayne.
Right.
So in those two cities, this is the honest to God fucking truth, it's crazy, but in those two cities, in my area, I never saw the retro purple Undertaker. Never once.
That was Series 1.
Yeah, I never saw that figure anywhere in this area.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's like, Jesus Christ. It's
that's
market penetration in some areas is insane. So, like you were alluding to, if they would just make more product available.
Right.
More. Okay, look, so in that series, The Undertaker, honestly, probably, if I'm looking at my market, which is a smaller market, that was probably the one they produced the least of. But they probably could have made the most out of, because I'd have bought 5 of them,
Exactly. And here's what I'm not understanding. You released guys that no one was really asking for into the areas, every area.
Seth
Rollins.
What I mean? God, how many Seth Rollins did I see?
Five below got every one that came out in Series 4, 5, and 6. Mm-hmm. And, okay, Macho Man and Ric Flair being the two everybody wanted, obviously.
Right.
I'm sure everybody wanted a Nakamura, and which I know I did. I busted to get one. But my point is, if you look at, like, big cities, wherever you go, there are wrestling fans. You know what I mean? You could go in, like you said, you can go to Fort Wayne, Indiana, you can go to your town, you can go to Florida, you can go to Texas. There's going to be wrestling fans there.
Yes.
And the guys they identify with most are The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Ric Flair, Macho Man. Why wouldn't you at least release the well-known names and save names like Bray Wyatt and, you release 2 Stings. Okay, both Stings could have been released everywhere, but release a Bray Wyatt and a Zack Ryder, and that's no knock to Zack Ryder, but I'm sure you understand what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You could have released
I totally get it, because in my area, I'm a hardcore wrestling fan going back to 1983.
Okay,
so
you're right.
I know who Jose Luis Rivera was.
Right.
But in my area, if I talk to guys around here, exactly like you said, they're going to say Stone Cold, Undertaker, Mankind. They know the big names, and that's.
They want the Attitude Era. They don't want the New Age wrestlers right away.
Right.
Now, okay, you give me Stone Cold, Mankind, The Rock, Triple H, which why he was a jumper that makes no sense.
I hate that figure.
And now you release those guys to me. I buy them. I spent my life savings on them. Okay, great. And guess what happens 2 months later? Now you release to me AJ Styles, Bray Wyatt, and Nakamura Sami Zayn. Well, now I need to have them so my set could be complete. So guess what? You got another buyer coming out,
Right.
and 20 other people are going to be behind me because I talked them up so much. you know, it just makes no sense. And then the stupidity of it is it's not just the retros. I have gone to 7 different Walmarts, 7 different Targets, and 2 or 3 Kmarts in the state of New Jersey, and that's within a 40-mile radius that I live around.
Mm-hmm.
I can't find the new elites when I need to find them. I saw the Undertaker Ghostbusters one time, and it was missing the belt and the hat.
The only, so that was like that. But other than that, around here, if I wouldn't have had that in, I'd have never got one.
Exactly.
Never got one.
Exactly. Now, see, you have that in. Then there's people who have friends that work at Walmart or, casually go there constantly. They don't work there, but they're there 4 times a day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they spot it. And, okay, everybody gets that call. Hey, they have the, okay, yeah, grab it. I got money for it, or I'll pay you in 2 days or whatever. Everyone's got somewhat of a hookup. But then you get a guy like me who walks in, sees the Undertaker Ghostbusters sitting there on the shelf from the side profile. I walk up to the box, and it's missing the hat and the belt out of the box. I ask the guy who works there, hey, do you have any more of these in the back? He tells me no. I leave. I come back 3 days later and find the Rock Ghostbuster sitting there. So he did have more.
Right.
But he didn't put them out till later, and then somebody else bought them.
Yes. And you know what? Brickseek's no help anymore.
No, it isn't. They changed everything. Since they had that malfunction where everything was ringing up 788 and not 1588, Brickseek went out. I think they stopped letting Brickseek know exactly what was in the store.
Yeah. It seems that way to me, too, because I don't even use it anymore. I don't even care.
I found a guy on YouTube who does Walmart. It's called, his exact YouTube name is Walmart Hidden Clearance. Okay. And I watch his videos, and he goes in there and he'll go to the clearance aisle, but then he'll show you that things that might be marked to 2. If they've been on clearance for 2 months at $2, they're actually 50 cents or whatever. And he showed that he uses the Walmart app while he's in the store, scans the box, and then it tells him whatever else is in the store.
Right.
So I downloaded the Walmart app and the Target app. I figured, what the hell, I might as well use them. He's using it to find things cheap. I just want to find out where the hell all the stuff is in the store. It'll at least tell me what aisle these things are in. So I go to the wrestling aisle and I scan a basic, and it comes up, I swear to God, Nate, $588, not available, all sold out. But I'm holding it in my hand. So I put it down. I picked up an
honestly, Arch, being in retail, I can tell you sometimes I have my scanner and I scan and it says
right. See that you just confirmed what I'm about to say. I looked at an Elite. It was an older Elite. I don't want to lie who it was. I scanned it. It said the same thing. So I called a worker over. He comes over. He sees what it's doing. He uses a scanner, and he looks at me and he goes, "Look, I'm not going to even lie to you, bro. We don't update our online until like a week from now. It's like once a week we do it. So that's telling you what was going on 4 days ago. We're not due to update again for another 5 or 6 days. So I can't tell you that it's going to be spot on with what's in store." I'm like, "But dude, I'm holding it in my hand and it's telling me it's not available.
Right.
If I go to buy this right now, are they going to let me buy it?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "So then why can't somebody just hit a button in the back there?" I'm like, "I know you got a guy sitting in front of a computer screen that controls the online store." "Yeah, I do." I'm like, "Well, then why can't he hit a button that says it's available?"
Right.
So tell me where the rest of these damn things are. He's like, "We just don't pay them to do that much." I'm like, "Really? That's really the only thing you could tell me?" He's like, "Yep, that's all I could tell you." So I'm walking away. He sees how pissed off I'm. He's like, "But I can tell you there are a few wrestlers in the clearance aisle." So I go running. I take a track and field star run to the clearance aisle now. And sure enough, there's 4 retros. 2 of them are Sheamus, 2 of them are HBK, and they're marked to $2.50.
Wow.
And everyone was saying that was happening. So, but I was never finding them. So I grab all four. I walk to the front. I pay $10. Like, okay, this is custom fodder, whatever. I'll give them away as an extra prize or whatever. I'll use them, whatever. It doesn't, not a big deal. For $2.50, I'm not letting them stay in the store. So before I walked out, I turn it around and I hit the barcode and I click on it, and this damn thing shows up and it tells me it's in clearance. And I'm like, so the things that are not supposed to be there are ringing up and telling me identically where they are. But the things that I'm holding in the regular toy aisle are not. And so I come home, I'm bitching to one of my friends. He's like, well, you do realize I found the new Elites in the fishing area, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, they had the setup for it. I'm like, the Ghostbuster ones? He's like, that and the Rock and a couple other ones were in this big Ghostbuster setup, the display, in the fish and tackle aisle.
What the fuck are they doing over there?
Why would they put them there? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, did you buy any? He's like, no, I don't buy toys. I'm like, thanks for making me feel like an idiot.
It's not uncommon in retail. My company, right now, at the end of the, for Christ's sake, at the end of the toy aisle, there is and my wife thinks this is just the funniest shit in the world. At the end of the toy aisle, there is a displayer of cell phone accessories.
Yes, I've seen one like that at the Walmart here too.
And the reason that she thinks is so funny is it's at the end of the toy aisle, and one of these cell phone accessories looks like a butt plug.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, what the hell am I doing?
It's
putting
a kickstand, but it looks like a butt plug.
Yes. What the hell am I doing this? I feel terrible. I feel like a terrible human being putting this at the end of a toy aisle. What a terrible human I am.
Right. Why are we showing children these things?
Yes, for God's sake. Have some morals.
No. It's getting harder and harder to toy hunt, and then you get on eBay and you see that the new Page and the new Cassius Ono is selling for $100. And it's like, okay, this is the one thing that pisses me off. I don't know if you're familiar with Family Guy, but grinds my gears.
Yeah.
You have the nerve to ask me for $100 for a figure that I know you just spent $15.88 on,
right?
Or $20 at the most. Let's say.
Let's not go on the that King Mabel and Pat Patterson rash.
Yeah.
Earlier this year.
But yet they showed up a week later after everybody thought that they were high end and worth it.
God damn it.
I felt bad. One of our guys, one of our good buddies, bought a Pat Patterson, and he's like, okay, I'm only going to try to sell it for $35. That's me making $10 above what I'm going to ship and pay for. I'm like, okay, go for it. I'm like, you're not looking to rip anybody off. You're saving them the time.
Right.
He got stuck with this thing for 3 weeks because people were finding Pat Patterson everywhere.
Honestly, I had the same problem because when I found them, I actually found them at my Walmart, and I bought two because I bought one for me, MOC. Right. And then I bought one. Oh shit! I'll sell it on eBay, and that was the exact problem I ran into. I only tried to sell it for $37, and then I sat on it forever, and then I just sold it to I think it was a friend in the era, or the Asylum. I can't remember now. Right. But I just sold it to them for $30. Whatever. I made $5 or whatever.
Right.
But,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I don't know.
That's the funniest thing, though, too, about the little things about these wrestling groups and the era. You meet these guys and they give you their price, and sometimes the price is so great you're not going to haggle because, like, all right, I'll give you for instance. Alex Lancone just went to his Walmart and he found Vince McMahon and Dolph Ziggler and EC3. Mm-hmm. He said he was getting Vince McMahon for himself. Okay, no harm, no foul. He's there shopping. It's up to him to pick what he wants.
Right.
He offered the rest of us EC3 or Dolph. Pat jumped on Dolph Ziggler because Pat's an Ohio guy as well, and he loves to represent the Ohio guys. So, okay, I wanted EC3. I'm like, Alex, what do you want? He's like, I want sticker price and whatever the shipping is. I'm like, okay, so what? He's like, it's $15.88. I'm like, so 22 will cover it? He said, yeah, no problem. That's perfect.
Right.
know what I mean? And I didn't even have to haggle or anything because why wouldn't I give 22? I'm going to give that much in gas, and by the time I get to the store, if I find it,
try to look around for it, and not to mention, the hair loss and
yeah, and the aggravation and the stupidity of the workers telling you, "Oh no, we don't have those. No, we've never had those. No, we don't know what the WWE is."
Funny thing about that, again, back to the groups, folks. Alex, you brought up Alex Loncone. He and I did one of hit one of his eBay. Yes, and I got a Mr. Fuji LJN, which I needed because I'm trying to. I have a complete Hasbro collection, so all the Hasbros that I get now are just extra.
Right. Right.
So now I've kind of moved on to LJNs. Okay. I remember busting my thumbs on these guys when I was a kid. That King Kong Bundy killed my thumbs.
That thing was like 5 pounds.
Yes, it was insane. But so I've started collecting those now, and he had a Fuji, and I got it for it looks great, fantastic condition, folks. I got it for $12.
Right.
From Alex, but anyway, we're chatting as we're finishing up the shipping information and everything. Turns out, guess what? Alex and I live literally 45 minutes from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know. It's such a small world.
Right. Exactly.
And or
I bought something from Petey, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm like, how much do you need?" He's like, "I need 22 shipped." I'm like, "Wait a minute, why can't I take the shipping off and I'll just pick it up from your ass?"
Right.
He's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll meet you for pizza." I'm like, "Okay, I'm buying a slice then to save you on the gas money and whatever." He's like, "Okay, great, not a problem." You find these people that live closer than you ever would have imagined too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then also, speaking of close, Archie and I are friends, and we don't live close. Archie lives far away from I, but we it's a connection, and to wrap up the segment, that's the whole point of this. The era is
family.
Yes, exactly. I don't look at it as I'm giving somebody my money or blah, blah, blah. Yeah, the raffles are fun. I'm a gambling, like you said, I'm a gambling man. My wife does not like to take me to Vegas, okay? But,
no, mine either.
but that's not what it is at the end of the day. We participate in the raffles, we participate in the events, but at the end of the day, again, I mean, that figure that Archie, that Bobby the Brain Heenan figure that Archie sold me, he could have easily sold that to somebody. Honestly, after I got that figure, I told my wife, I said, he could have sold this to me for $125 and I'd have bought it.
And see, that's another thing that I don't do. I try my best to cover what it costs me, what it's going to be for shipping, and if I make 10 or $15 at the most sometimes, you know what I mean? Because here's the thing. We all started out buying that, crappy looking Hulk Hogan missing a finger.
Right. Yeah, or the doink, the shocker doink.
Right, or a nose warrior or something. And then as we got older in our collecting, we realized, well, hey, that isn't that much money anymore. $20 for a Boss Man 2 with a nightstick, which that's hard to find, but You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I can give that 20, or I can give this, or I can give that. Or, okay, I sold something to so-and-so, and now I can buy, or, oh, wait, so-and-so has what I want, and I have what he wants. Let's just trade now and, make up the difference somewhere else. And it's funny. You get a lot of people who are in this for the collecting. Like, I'd have to say 75%, 80% of the people in the era are in this for the collecting, helping, and the love of having these things because they make us feel like kids again. And then there's like 10% who are, like we always said, scalpers and just looking to make a quick buck. And then there are people who are, like you said, you're complete right now. I am as well. I have every Hasbro I need, And then they win something. Like I had someone win a raffle a few weeks back. And I messaged him like I message everybody. Congratulations, buddy. You've won. Happy it was you, because, when it's somebody we know, it makes it even better because we know it's going to a good place.
Yes, sir.
I need your address and what's your choice. He picked his choice, gave me his address. I start filling out the label. 20 minutes later, he messages me. He's like, can you send it somewhere else? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Thinking, Like, I know I hide from my wife when I buy something or something.
Right, yeah.
Wants to go to his work or his family's house or something like that. He's like, okay, he gives me a totally different name and address in a state that's like 400 or 500 miles away. I'm like, okay, what am I doing here exactly? I had to ask. I had to be nosy. I'm like, what am I doing here? He's like, oh, I just traded that to somebody else, and they're giving me what I want, and they're getting what they want. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, look that. You made two people's day.
Right. I'm like, okay, I don't know if this is a good thing or bad. I'm like, I guess. I'm like, you know what? Okay, no problem. Sent it out. He messaged me. He's like, the guy got it. He's very happy. I got what I wanted. I'm happy, and I'll see you in the next event. I'm like, okay. It was just mind blowing. I'm like, I've never had anybody give away their winnings before they get it.
And that
He's saving the middleman. He doesn't want to have to reship once he gets it,
Well, and that's the thing. That's the reason why I always, honest to God, the only two figure groups that so far, for me, I got into this, it would have been, the first time I got into a figure group was the Era, so it would have been a year or so ago at that,
right.
at Heroes and Legends event. But the only two groups so far that have stood out to me as not just guys wanting to take my money, but a community of people of the same interest, a community of people, a diversity, and just beautiful humanity, honestly, is the Era and the Asylum. And that's the only two groups that I will talk about on my podcast. And the Era being my first and being the one that's in my heart the most. I want to encourage every single listener of this show. You know me as your host. Some of you know me as your friend, because we're a small group, and a lot of the group is people that I know personally, or know people that I know personally. As you grow, the Era is a place that if you like to collect, if you like community, if you like professional wrestling, you should join this group, and you should be a part of it. And
one of Pat's favorite things to say when we put out a new members list, like people who just joined, is welcome home.
Yes.
Because we open the doors, and it's not just like, okay, John Fernandez joined today. Thank you for joining. And then we forget about you altogether. We make sure that if you need something, if you're looking for something, if you want to sell something, if you're looking to trade something, or if you're just looking for people to talk to, because there are guys who just want to get certain information, like, well, what's this word? What's that word? What can I get for this? Or is this good that I paid this much? They're afraid to ask certain times. We go out of our way to tell them it's okay to ask, because here's the thing. We're not just 2,000 members. We're 2,000 close friends, because that's the funny thing. I talk to at least 100 members who aren't really members because they're my friends. I talk to them once a day, if not more. Mm-hmm. Josh Blevins, Matthew Gore, Petey, Pat, Dave Duncan, Alex Lancone, Mike Bedard, Matt DaCosta, Tom Tardif, yourself, Nate, Dan Gleason, Clayton Garraway. Those are people I talk to on a daily basis, and not just about wrestling. It's a message of, hey, buddy, what's up? Hey, what are you doing today? Hey, I heard you weren't feeling good yesterday. Are you okay? I went out with a back injury a few months back, and the outpour of messages from not just the admin, the other 9 admin, but Nate, Dan, and a host of other people, all of these other people. And again, I've only met in a few because we met at WrestleMania or at an event, or they live in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. The outpour of, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? Are you getting the right help? Hey, I may have a doctor that you could talk to fix your back. Or, hey, take this and use this kind of heating pad. Or that was amazing, because I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to say this, and I don't care if one of my friends that I'm actually in person with that I know listens to this podcast right now. I had friends and family who weren't checking on me that much.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
had legitimate brothers who were like once a week, you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. All right, goodbye. And it was like, wow. And then I have 20 other people on a messenger going, are you okay? Do you need anything? Are you sleeping all right? What did you do here? And it's amazing the outpour of connections that you make with
absolutely
man, woman, or child. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Just like we talked about when we started off this segment, Jamin. You know, I
Right.
how many people in the era do you think actually have met Jamin in person?
5. In all honesty,
Exactly.
I
You
think
know,
5. Because,
it's and then it was over $1,000, and
right.
I don't remember what exactly the total was.
It was 1,056, I think, or something like that, because I saw Pat post where he gave it to the GoFundMe.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, and I don't mean that as a put down to Jamin saying only 5, but Jamin might have met some of us at WrestleMania. I know he's met Petey in person. You know what I mean? And it's like at the most it could be 10 or 15 members between Era and Asylum. But these were people who have barely talked to him going, I'm going to help. I want to be here to help. I'm answering the call. Let me do what I got to do and do this. And there were a few who only could buy 1 or 2 spots because, well, maybe life is hard right now. We understand
and
that.
You know what? Kindness doesn't have a price.
Exactly. It's not about the price, right? You bought a spot just to say, here, I'm helping. You know what I mean?
And I just for our listeners and those of you that have listened to the show, you may have noticed. I mean, I posted Jamin's GoFundMe on my Facebook group,
right?
Just because we are not just wrestling fans. We are not just figure collectors.
Nope.
We're human beings, and that's what I'm trying to hit home here.
Yeah, you go through life sometimes, and you think, there's a saying, no 2 snowflakes are alike. You say to yourself, there's no anybody out there who likes the same thing as I do. I quote 80s movies on a daily basis. You know what I mean? I sit there and can watch cartoons, whether my granddaughter or one of my children that are younger that still watch cartoons are in the room. I'll put on a Bugs Bunny or a SpongeBob cartoon just for the hell of it to laugh. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you find out through wrestling of all things that there are 100 other people who love 80s movies and cartoons and Count Chocula and talking about, the 90s and, in an age, and I'm going to say this, and I hope I don't offend anybody because of what I'm about to say. In an age where everybody gets offended by the slightest thing,
yes,
no one gets offended in the era. You know what I mean? And in that group particularly, and I'm not saying we talk ugly or we say anything or we judge each other. No, but you got it's a ratio of like 105 men and then like 2 women. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or out of the 2,000 members, there might be 50 women, but these women are not becoming offended by all these other men saying something stupid. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or making a joke about one of the female wrestlers, or because they know we're not doing it just to be brutish or ugly or stupid. It's just the way we are.
Mm-hmm.
No one gets offended and goes, "I'm triggered. You just offended me, and I'm suing you." No. And again, that's why it's that escape from reality. You could have a job like myself. I'm a financial advisor, where something as simple as $5 not being put into their account fast enough, or them not getting to buy the right stock at the right time, or their final will and testament not being filled out quick enough, even though they're only 30 and they're not going to die. You know what I mean?
Or like in my case, where they want to return something they bought 6 years ago,
right? Without a receipt, and it's open.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, I am not going to return that VCR, sir.
Right. Exactly. People get triggered and pissed off so easily nowadays, whether it be traffic, the way the weather is. Maybe their significant other told them off and said, hey, all you did today was, sit on the couch, whatever. That's why Era is that escape, because then you go on and you look at the board and someone posts a Marty Jannetty. Pat goes and says, I'm taking that. And then 4 other guys go, but I need that to finish my collection. And then everybody starts cracking a joke. You know what I mean? It becomes
Blevins with Hulk Hogan. Hey.
Yeah, exactly. Josh Blevins loving Hulk Hogan, to the point that he rips every T-shirt he owns on every toe that he goes on. But I mean, with a guy like Jamin, I met Jamin, I think 2 or 3 weeks after I joined the groups, and there wasn't even it was like we didn't miss a step in the way that we talked and got to know each other. It was like someone I knew all my life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I find out he lives like 40 minutes away, and I'm like, wow, that's like too close. You know what I mean? It's why are we not hanging out on a weekly basis?
Yeah. Well, and just as an example, I mean, and this is the power of not only the Facebook group The Era, but this podcast is Archie and I have never met in person.
Right.
In our life. We have chatted, we've never even talked voice-wise in person in our life.
Right, this is the first time.
And we have chatted on Facebook a number of times.
Yep.
And you know what? When we sit down to start a segment, I go, okay, are Archie and I going to be able to do this for an extended period of time? I'm going to say a half an hour. And guess what? It's an hour and 13 minutes.
Right.
And
exactly. And we're talking like two old friends who haven't seen each other in a while.
Yes,
we're not talking like two strangers who have never met, you know.
Absolutely. That is the power of humanity.
I'll go back to WrestleMania of this year that just passed, WrestleMania 35 last year. Or this year, actually, was in March. I've met Petey a dozen times. You know, like I said, I bought my first couple of figures from him. I went to his house. And now Matthew Gore, Henry Sugars, and Pat Manzanetti are coming into town as well for WrestleMania, and they're staying at Petey. So I'm spending the entire WrestleMania weekend with these five guys. You know what I mean? And then we find out DaCosta and his brother are coming as well, and Christopher Trost is coming as well, and there's going to be a bunch of Era members. So it becomes Era Live when we know we're going to be at WrestleMania. So I go to Petey's house down the shore. I meet Matt Gore and Henry Sugars for the first time. And there wasn't like there wasn't an uncomfortable silence where we ever looked at each other going, hey, I've never met you face to face. It was like we were all best friends because it's been a year or two since we got to know each other. Right. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And we were cracking jokes. The next day, Pat gets into town. I walk through the door again to come into Petey's house. And Pat looks at me and goes, there he is, and gives me this big bear hug like we haven't seen each other in 4 years. You know what I mean? And you know, then the Costa brothers walked in. We ordered a pizza. We drank a beer. We cracked up. You know what I mean? And it became I'll even go even more in depth. We were walking home from the bar the first night, me, Petey, Henry, and Matt. And Petey said it was a 1 mile walk. It was 3.5 miles. In the rain. A light drizzle.
1 mile.
1 mile. Why we walked home, I don't know. But that's fine. And after having a couple beers at the bar and now walking home, I had to go to the bathroom. So we weren't walking on a street with like a 7-Eleven on it. We were walking on a residential street.
Right.
Nothing but homes. And I guess the beer got to my head or whatever you want to say, Nate. But I looked at Henry and I went, Henry, block me. And I proceeded to pull my pants down and piss in the middle of the street on a tree. And I started giggling because all I heard Henry go was, he turned around and went, guys, he's peeing. And Petey turns around and goes, nice dick, yo. And Matt starts falling on the floor. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I finished up. I pulled my pants up. Petey's like, why did you have to pull your pants down? Why couldn't you just unzipper your pants? And I'm like, I'm wearing jogging pants. There is no zipper. And he cracked up. But it was like, wow, that was too comfortable. I don't do that in front of I've done it for 20 years. I just did this in front of these guys I just met. You know?
I've never pissed like that in front of my own brother.
Right, exactly. I tell him to go away when I'm in the bathroom when we're in a stall. And then we got to Mania, and Clayton Garraway showed up, and Christopher Trost, and a bunch. We had 40 people. Scott Gayhart was doing a cookout. We brought pizza and booze, and it almost got to a point when it was like 4:30. We had to go into Mania. We didn't want to go in. Mm-hmm. We wanted to sit outside and tailgate for the rest of the night. We didn't care about Mania anymore. No one said, "Oh, well, we gave $400 a ticket or $200 a ticket."
Right.
We want to stay here and crack it because none of us were sitting next to each other, so it's not like we could hang out at Mania.
Okay, so that is. I have to ask, and I'm not at all trying to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
But I have to ask, because I haven't got to talk to anybody, honest to God, in my... Okay, all right, 10-year-old to 25-year-old me. I'm 41. 10-year-old to maybe 25 to 30-year-old me, the dream was always to go to WrestleMania. Okay.
Okay.
I want to. If WrestleMania comes close to me, which
Right.
the closest it ever came was '92 Indianapolis, and my mama wasn't paying for that shit. So anyway,
I understand.
My question to you is, nowadays, with
Mm-hmm.
the big stadium WrestleManias, and
Right.
this is something that my brother and I have discussed, is it or is it not more of a pain in the ass to go to WrestleMania than it's worth? I mean, honest to God, I mean, was it just like, man, I should have just stayed home with these guys and watched it on pay-per-view?
Well, see, here's the thing. I've been there 2 different occasions. I went to WrestleMania 29 and now WrestleMania 35.
Okay, so you went
And it was
to the MetLife.
Yeah, they were both at MetLife Stadium.
Yep.
And it was 2 different occasions that were totally different. The first time I went, my wife surprised me 3 days before Access and WrestleMania with Access tickets and WrestleMania tickets.
Okay, that's awesome.
And me and my oldest son John and her went to WrestleMania and Access, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Got to meet JR, got to meet Diamond Dallas Page, JBL, Lita, Billy Gunn. It was amazing to be there at Access.
I bet.
The next day I went to Mania, and I started watching wrestling. I told this story in a post that you made about what got me into wrestling. My granddad sat me down for WrestleMania 6. Because before then it was like ill wrestling, and I couldn't stand it. And he made me watch WrestleMania 6.
Okay.
Open Warrior. And it changed my life. I know that sounds corny to some people, but it really changed my life because I was sharing something with my granddad that I never had shared before.
Uh-huh.
And he and I watched Raw every night. We originally started watching Tuesday Night Titans together, and then Monday Night Raw came out. We started watching, and then Monday Night Nitro, and we'd watch both together. And I had a blast every Monday with my granddad. And then he passed away. And I stopped watching wrestling altogether, Nate. I couldn't look at the screen because I shared that with him. You know, it's like it really hurt me to have to watch this alone now.
It's a memory thing, and I will. It's gonna sound stupid. It might not.
No.
I feel the same thing about anything having to do with the Titanic.
Okay.
Because my grandfather was like obsessed with the Titanic.
Okay. So a history buff and someone
yes.
who really admired the Titanic and watching everything about it. I understand.
So anytime I see something about the Titanic, as silly as it sounds, I get choked up, you know, because that's Grandpa. Funny story about him though. When that movie came out, they made all those they made all those, I mean, when that movie came out, they made a fuck ton of documentaries about that.
Yes.
And I remember my grandpa, my dad, and I were sitting on the couch, vivid memory, and my dad's scrolling through the old school cable listings, and he goes, "Hey Dad, there's a documentary on the Titanic on A&E. Do you want to watch it?" And my grandpa says to my dad, and I quote, "I can't. If I watch one more documentary about that, I'm going to know the name of every son of a bitch on that boat."
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
But anyway, yes.
No, so I stopped watching. My son got into it, and I would just let him watch. I would hear it in the background as noise.
Yeah.
He comes to me. He's like 9.5, 10 years old, and he's like, "Dad." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Shawn Michaels is fighting Ric Flair at WrestleMania 25. Can we rent it?" I'm like, "What?" It's like, I gotta see this match, Dad. It's Ric Flair's last match. And I'm a Ric Flair fan and I'm a Shawn Michaels fan. And I said, "Yeah, we could watch," because I felt like it was my granddad telling me it's okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Share this with your son the way I shared it with you.
What a way to get back in.
Right. And I got sucked. I watched that match and I got sucked back in. The rest of the pay-per-view was okay, but that match was everything it needed to be. It was Flair, it was Michaels, two goats going one-on-one. And then now here comes WrestleMania 29. My wife gets me the tickets as a surprise. I go, and as I walk to the gate of the entrance for MetLife Stadium, it was like a life-defining moment in my fandom, because I said I went from WrestleMania 6 being introduced to WrestleMania 25 to refinding my spark and my love to now being at 29 in person.
Yeah, definitely.
It was everything it needed to be.
Damn.
And it was a great show. I mean, I got to see CM Punk versus The Undertaker. I got to see Brock Lesnar versus Triple H. The Shield was still new and interesting. You know, everything was great about it, except for Cena winning. But
that year, it's funny because I obviously I didn't go to that Mania, but that it's funny that you brought up that year because that year holds a special place for me too. Backstory: some people listening to the show may or may not know, but new listeners that are listening. My wife is not. When we got together, she didn't know anything about wrestling, and she is not by any means a wrestling fan. She's one of those people that she tolerates my fandom. When I watch anything wrestling on TV, she just is on her phone. If something piques her interest, she looks at it. Well,
she'll ask you who's that, what did they do, and that's about it.
Yes, and she is a fan of the Brothers of Destruction. She is a fan of Undertaker and Kane. And you talked about 29, you talked about Punk and Undertaker. And it holds a special place in my heart, too, not because of the Mania per se, but there was a Raw a few weeks before that Mania that was in Indianapolis. And we bought tickets. She actually bought me the tickets as a gift.
Okay.
And, hey, babe, we're going to go to Indianapolis and watch Raw. Well, it just so happened that the weekend before that Raw, Paul Bearer passed away.
You saw the Raw where he put the ashes on his body, didn't you?
Yes, I was there.
Oh, my God, Nate.
And the most amazing thing about that to me, and this is, again, it's a personal connection with wrestling. Wrestling fans, we are... My wife got to go. We wound up, and it's sad that Paul Bearer passed away.
Yes,
but in the grand scheme of things, we got to go to the first Raw she got to go to was a Raw
by that
was heavily Undertaker Kane.
Right.
So I mean, that is a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? Everything about that, the build up to that match, was amazing.
Perfect.
They couldn't have. The only thing that might have made it better was if Punk would have won, because at least it would have. Because Lesnar didn't need to beat the streak.
Right.
It should have been Bray Wyatt or Punk to beat the streak, in my opinion, because those two were the ones that needed that rub to go forward.
I agree. Like the only three guys that ever had that to me was Punk, Wyatt. It's funny that you said that because we agree on that. And then going back. The only other time in the history of the streak that I was like, yeah, this is the guy to end it with was Orton.
Yeah, because he had the Legend Killer character.
And obviously you're building your future around him.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you. And then the only other guy, and he never faced, I was talking about people that Undertaker faced, but at Mania, but the only other guy that I thought would have benefited, and we're getting off topic, which we do on this show.
No, it's okay.
I always thought at the time, I think that if you would have given the streak, and you can disagree, but I honest to God think with his charisma, with the heel he had, and with the potential he had, I think that today, if you would have given the streak to Wade Barrett, he had
something behind him.
Yes. Yeah.
They killed Wade Barrett when they fed him to Cena. You know what I mean? So there was no really fix. That might have been the only thing that could have fixed him after that, is if he would have beaten The Undertaker. And then he would have gotten the right heel heat, and people would have booed him for the right reasons,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Orton was a good choice. Edge could have been a decent choice, too, because at the time when him and Edge were feuding, it was leading into WrestleMania, but they really didn't let them go the way they should have, But here's the thing. If you were not going to allow a guy like Triple H or Shawn Michaels, who has roots in this business and busted their ass for this business, or a guy like Ric Flair, or even Hulk Hogan to beat the streak, why are you feeding him rookies or guys who have only been in the WWE for 4 or 5 years and letting him destroy them?
Right.
Because all you're doing is taking away their luster and their shine.
You're killing off your future.
And I think that was a reason Punk left and Wyatt had to change his character in so many ways, because you killed me. So what am I going to do?
That's one of the things that, even though I would not consider myself a WWE hater,
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the things that I think is a point of contention for me in
Right.
how they got themselves to where they are now.
Right.
Is
They painted themselves in a corner.
exactly they didn't use a guy like Undertaker or like Triple H. You know, I mean,
Right.
uh, okay, yeah, you can say Triple H at the end kind of sort of put over Seth Rollins, but he really didn't.
No.
You know, I mean,
Exactly.
they didn't do what previous generations did.
No one passed the torch. Exactly.
Exactly, yes.
You
It's,
know.
we're still the fact that let's just say 10 years ago, WrestleMania 26,
Right.
the fact that today when it comes to WrestleMania, the guys that are the main event the rest of the year are in the mid card at WrestleMania.
Right. And then you bring back a guy like Brock Lesnar or The Rock, which I love The Rock. I'm
Yeah,
not
oh yeah,
hating
yeah.
The Rock,
That's not at all hating on the
but
stars of the
you're
past.
bringing them back to make it a spectacle. That's great, but they don't have to be the main event. Brock Lesnar proved that this past year at WrestleMania 35 when him and Seth Rollins went on first.
Yes.
You know, I don't have to be the main event. If I'm going to lose and I'm losing to Seth Rollins and passing the torch and giving him the title, then let me go on first. We'll have a 10-minute match and it'll be over. And then I can go home. You know what I mean? I don't got to be there all night after that. You know?
But then what do? Over the past, WrestleMania was in April, so over the past 7 months, they fucked that all up.
And they put it's now Lesnar, which, okay, the Fiend needed the title, but Lesnar has the main title that Seth Rollins took off of him.
Right, yes. It's not the same title, but it's the same position.
Right, it's the same position. You put him as the top, and then who was he feuding with? Rey Mysterio. What?
Yeah, how did we wind up there? And I'm not hating on Rey. I like Rey, but I
don't hate Rey Mysterio. I just think that the character has become bland.
Yeah, it's stale. And I wanted when Rey came back, and I knew that something was going on with Dominic. By now, I wanted Dominic to turn on Rey. I mean, if I'm a betting man, that's what I want to see. I want to see that.
Revisit the Eddie Guerrero storyline. Have Dominic say "You're not my father" and attack Rey Mysterio.
And that for me personally, that goes back to honestly one of my folks. You can go back in the archives as Conrad Thompson would say. Mm-hmm. You could go back in the archives of the We Can't Wrestle podcast and listen. One of my favorite feuds ever, and one of my favorite matches ever, is that ladder match with Eddie and Ray.
The symbolicness of it made kind of no sense because you're putting a child on a pole, basically. But
yes, it's
the lead up, the storyline, it had a crazy slow burn that everybody went, wow.
And regardless of what was at the top of that ladder, that match was fucking crazy good.
Mm-hmm. Everything about that match made sense. Even Vicky Guerrero coming out and messing with the match, and doing what she did.
Yes.
But then again, they unraveled that later on because after Eddie passed, Ray went on to have success. And what did they do? They have Vicky and Chavo turn on him. So then, why did Vicky help Ray in the beginning anyway?
Yeah, and that goes to show you that was kind of the era to me where the worm turned. And again, I am not a WWE hater. People listen to this show, they know. I WWE. My biggest it's funny because when I was younger, I loved the week-to-week television,
mm-hmm.
and then the pay-per-view was okay, cool. It's the pay-per-view,
right?
And nowadays, the week-to-week television for WWE,
makes
honest
no sense.
To God, yes, I could miss it, I could not miss it, but then I watched the pay-per-view, and they put on amazing wrestling shows.
But see, this is where I'll contradict you a bit, though, or I'll tell you that you're wrong.
Okay.
You give me Raw and SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it 1 week. I missed it 1 week. I watched it the next week. I missed it the next week. I go now and I watch the pay-per-view. And you fill 40% of the pay-per-view with matches that were just on Raw and SmackDown. Now, I understand you have to give me storyline. Yes, that's what I want is storyline. But if I've seen Rusev versus Bobby Lashley 4 times before No Way Out, I don't want to see them again at No Way Out now.
Right,
you make me totally and utterly bored of that feud. What it should be, see, they're saying they're going to book Rusev versus Bobby Lashley in a match at Survivor Series. That's what they're saying right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay, fine. Let's forget about the NXT storyline for a minute and put them in a match. Wouldn't it have been wiser though to give Bobby Lashley 4 partners and give Rusev 4 partners and let them fight in a Survivor Series elimination match, and then go to the next pay-per-view and give us their first actual one-on-one counter?
Give them a grudge match. Yes, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. So yeah, I totally agree with that assessment. I think that you can. And a lot of people are hating on the Lashley Rusev thing. Whatever they talk about, it's Vince's obsession with cuckolding or what have you. But I think that feud, if you listen to the fan reactions to that feud,
right
in the arena,
it's getting good.
Yes, and that could be. I mean, that could be a main event. You could put that over a title match at this point. And it's probably
yeah. I mean, it's just as good as, like, let's say old-fashioned Hogan versus Macho because of Liz. You know what I mean? It's
which is one of my favorite rivalries in the history of wrestling.
I asked a question a couple of weeks back, and the question was on the air on the board was, when did we as wrestling fans start caring about ratings? Because it's like, everybody's like, well, they only scored 800,000 fans. Why do we care? If we enjoyed the show, what does it matter how many other people watched it?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
If I want to go watch the Queen movie that came out last year, and I like Freddie Mercury, I don't care if I'm in the theater all alone. I'm going to see that movie. Exactly. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But in the same regard, when did we as wrestling fans care what the storylines were really about? I mean, no one said when Hogan and Macho Man was going at it about Elizabeth that it was because Hogan and Liz were having sex and it was a cuckold fantasy. Nobody even knew what that word meant back in, the early 90s and late 80s. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why is that all of a sudden what the storyline's about? No, the storyline's about Bobby Lashley stealing Rusev's wife.
Right. Yes.
It doesn't mean Rusev wants to see them have sex. It doesn't mean that there's some hidden undertone there.
And it's if you've ever watched any, one of my favorite, not necessarily one of my favorite wrestlers, okay, but one of my favorite minds in wrestling, to watch him do a shoot interview or watch him talk about wrestling, is Scott Levy, Raven.
Without a doubt.
And Raven says there are really only 7 storylines in professional wrestling.
Right.
And those are the things that the same thing with wrestling, the same thing with a TV show, Breaking Bad or Walking Dead or what have you, is I want to tug at your heartstrings. I want to get into your psyche and say, what if your wife was making out with this guy on television?
Right.
I mean, you can see if they would do this the right way. I mean, Bobby Lashley could be pelted with soda cups like Hulk Hogan was when he turned heel.
Without a doubt. You know what I mean? How many, or forget about men who are mad because he stole Rusev's wife. How about the fact that men who fantasize about Lana being upset that Lashley's the one that got her?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It doesn't just have to be about Rusev. You could leave Rusev out of the picture. If Rusev didn't return and Lashley walked out on the stage with Lana, people would still be booing him. Mm-hmm. So there's 20 different ways to go in that storyline that they could be going right now. But yet everybody's turning it into, oh, well, it's because Rusev wants to see Lana have sex with Lashley. No! Rusev does not want to see that.
That's the whole point. It's the reverse of that. He does not want to see that.
I mean, and it's not like she's telling it. See, if they for some reason started in a room with Rusev being tied to a chair and she was on top of Lashley and making out with him, then I would say, okay, that's what it's definitely a cuckold fantasy, because that's basically the way these things start.
Right.
She's nowhere near Rusev. They got, the closest they got was last Monday on Raw when they did that whole divorce court thing with Jerry Lawler, and even then, that was the worst part of it for me. Her acting sucked. When she said Rusev cheated on me, I'm like, what, really? We're going in that direction now?
The first thing I noticed in that segment, the thing that most of it I did not dislike, but the thing I disliked about that segment, I don't know if you noticed it or not. A couple other people I talked to didn't until they went back and watched it. Did you notice that during that segment she lost a lot of her accent?
Well, she always does. No, she's been losing it since she started on Total Divas. Right. She has not had that Russian accent for almost a year now.
And it just, to me, it just takes that.
It really does.
Yeah, it takes something away from it. It takes
started
something away from her.
As he was meant to be Ivan Drago, and she was meant to be, the the wife of Ivan Drago in the Rocky movie.
Yes.
Which she looked the part immensely.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? He didn't because he wasn't this 7-foot blonde Viking, but
he was still awesome. I mean,
he was still a monster. Okay, great. Now that you've taken away her accent, you made her this ditzy blonde, which with the way she's acting on television, she is a ditzy blonde.
Yeah.
She has no wrestling ability. I'm going to be honest. I'll be a hater here. She really can't wrestle. And now that you've taken away the Russian accent, she really doesn't have the same appeal she once did. So, as pretty as she is, when she opens her mouth, it's not all that pretty anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd rather see Mandy Rose do a promo than I would her. And Mandy Rose cuts a great promo. But my point is, she can't cut a promo to save her life without that Russian accent. Mm-hmm. And the only time it comes out is when she says the name Rusev.
Yes, Rusev.
Yeah, right. That's the only time she keeps the Russian accent. And it was like the segment. He wanted to have sex with me, and he wanted to put a baby in me. Well, I'm sorry, you've been married to him now for 2 years, and that's usually what husbands want out of their wives.
That's kind of what marriage is about.
That's your only gripe here. How about see if she would have? They could even have turned it into him verbally abusing her, or even he hit her at one point. You know what I mean? They could have went that route.
Yeah, because at one point he was a heel, so you could go back to that. Yeah.
No, Rusev smacked me, whatever, and it would have been ugly. It would have been a bad storyline to bring out abuse, but then maybe we would have fluctuated towards liking Bobby Lashley because he was defending her. You know what I mean, or something to that effect. But all you've really given us is, okay, he sold his wife. Rusev looks great in all of this, and he's actually putting on great matches. Mm-hmm. But then you put them both on Team Hogan, which that match made no sense, but okay, whatever. And it was at Crown Jewel, so it really didn't count. But then your next move is to put them in a match at Survivor Series, and I understand put them at one of the biggest stages. But again, I think if they would have been a part of a Survivor Series match with both of them being captains,
and to that point, I mean, to be honest, since probably 2006 or 2007, I don't even. Honest to God, when I watch Survivor Series, I don't even look at it as one of the big.
No, it's not. It's fallen behind. Yeah, it really has because they took away this. There's one Survivor Series or two Survivor Series matches a year where it's the actual 5-on-5 match, and all they're really going for is as many title matches as they possibly can after that.
Not to mention, usually the Survivor Series, one of the Survivor Series matches is brand versus brand, and that's another problem is that they've clouded the brands so much that brand versus brand doesn't mean shit anymore.
Exactly. And what are they fighting for? Now that they've involved NXT, it does make it better.
And that SmackDown was amazing.
Yeah. I still have yet to see a rating on it, and I'm busting to see what the ratings were for that SmackDown.
With the circumstances surrounding it, it's one of those things where with the circumstances surrounding this, you expect it's going to be a shit show, and it turns out to be a fantastic show.
Okay, I went to a Monday Night Raw quite a few years back. It was at least 8 or 9 years ago, and all the superstars were in Switzerland. And a volcano erupted in Switzerland. So they couldn't fly out of Switzerland, and they left, I want to say 60% of the roster was still in there.
Okay.
And it ended up being a Raw/SmackDown event. And the only guys that were there from Raw were Triple H, Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, and CM Punk. Mm-hmm. Everybody else was a SmackDown star. But I got to see Bret Hart, who appeared out of the clear blue sky. I got to see The Undertaker, who shouldn't have been there because it was a Raw. The main event was CM Punk and Luke Gallows versus Triple H and Rey Mysterio, which was great. It made it, you filled in the gaps because the main roster of Raw wasn't there. So you brought the main roster of SmackDown, plus a couple of hidden gems. You did this now with what happened with Saudi Arabia, and everyone kind of looked around and went, okay, well, all of Raw and SmackDown is in Saudi Arabia.
What are we going to do?
There's only a few guys here, like guys that didn't want to go, like Sami Zayn and Dan O'Brien, who won't take the blood money from the Saudi prince, which is great. I commend them on doing that. Thank you for not going.
Yes.
And then, everyone's shaking like, oh, God, what's going to happen? But then here comes NXT, which is fantastic. NXT every Wednesday has been phenomenal. No matter what the ratings say, it's been unbelievable every week.
It's going to be
that'll be my last question. But go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah. You get NXT there, and they excel by far. It's not just Adam Cole. It's not just Shayna Baszler. You got Matt Riddle and Keith Lee, who are the mid-carders, doing things that are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got guys like Roderick Strong and Leo Rush, and it's like, wow. It's almost like NXT is the redheaded stepchild, but then they walk out on stage tap dancing and singing, and you go, why did we hate them? Or why don't we give them
Yes,
enough time?
exactly.
Or why haven't they been in the spotlight already?
And that segues to actually the last question I had on my list here is I wanted to discuss the past 6 months of I would say for us wrestling fans. I don't know if it's for the general public yet, but for us hardcore wrestling fans that are going to watch no matter what the fuck.
Right.
This new wrestling boom.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, for me personally,
I love it.
And I do too. I absolutely love it. And I am not in any way, and I've said this on the show before, at this point, being, 5 weeks into their TV show, I am not in any way hating on AEW. They do what they do, but I have to say, personally, my favorite programs right now are, as you had alluded to, NXT, and I love the NWA Power Show.
Yes. Yes.
And I choose not to be negative a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. So what I choose to do is I choose to post on Facebook groups and etc. NXT was great this week. Power was great this week. I choose to not even... Right. I don't want to attack AEW because I think that if that's what some people like, that is awesome. And I don't think the show has by any means been bad. It's not necessarily my cup of tea so far.
The only reason they lost ratings was because they went up against the World Series in the playoffs those couple of weeks that they were on. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think they'll rebound this week with the million viewers they were getting.
And I personally have my issues with the show. I don't talk about them. I say this. I do talk about them on my own podcast.
Right, of course.
It's my forum.
This is your stage. You can do what you want on it. Right.
But I'm not going to go on to, say, somebody who posts about like an AEW on the era.
Right.
I'm not a fan of people that shit on other people's likes.
No, because we all have our opinions, and anybody is entitled to their opinion. Yes. But I don't need to force mine down your throat just to get you to agree with me. You know what I mean?
My biggest problem with AEW, honestly, and you can disagree, you can whatever. I think that, and it sounds silly from a wrestling fan because it's about wrestling and it's about what happens between the ropes.
Right.
But I think that I don't know why every match on the show has to be so long.
I understand.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I've had that gripe with the last couple of weeks with Raw as well.
Yes, definitely. With the Raw 3-hour format, there are times where I'm like, God, I love wrestling, but this match is so long, and it doesn't need to be.
Take 3 commercial breaks during the Natalya and Charlotte versus, which I love Natalya and Charlotte and the Kabuki Warriors, but they gave them 28 minutes.
Yeah,
and that's a match that could have been given 15, and then they could have given Seth Rollins versus Adam Cole 28 minutes. They only gave them 15.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or give someone, example. Give me a 15-minute women's tag match.
Right.
And then, as a viewer that is not, again, I always like to stress, not a hardcore fan like you or I that knows the history of these guys, but instead of a 28-minute women's match, give me a 15-minute women's match, and then give me a 5-minute segment telling me why the Viking Raiders are so good.
Right.
It doesn't have to be...
that backstage promo or vignette that shows me a little bit of their past in Ring of Honor in Japan.
Yeah, and that's
putting them against the Polo Boys, which, those two guys were... I actually know Bobby Wayward and Nikos Ricos. I've met them because they wrestle in a promotion in Rolway. Okay. And I've met them, and they're both great guys. But it's like, I don't know... As a casual fan, I don't know them. Right. I don't know where they come from, and they're in a bad gimmick, and they're being fed to the Viking Raiders because they're the tag team champions. Mm-hmm. That used to work in like 1992 on Saturday Morning Superstars.
Right.
To
Yes.
everybody to the champion. The Natural Disasters beat countless jobbers on Saturday morning. But for Monday Night Raw, I expect the Viking Raiders to be going against somebody like Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode.
Exactly.
Or the club,
That's the thing that I was getting to about the storytelling too. Like, okay, back in the day, it was for the 4 Monday Night Raws leading up to the pay-per-view, you give me 8 to 12-minute matches, and you tell me the story leading to the pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view is where I get the 28-minute match.
Right.
You know,
right.
I'm gonna,
or an hour match, because sometimes they let they'll let two guys go, and it's the lead up to the beauty and magicalness, if that's a word, that goes with Bret Hart. Yeah. The beauty that goes with Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12 was there was 2 months worth of build, and those two guys would cut a promo, just one of them, and then they'd go face to face. Then we'd get a vignette the next week showing us Shawn Michaels training.
They had
and
not
dream.
They did not make physical contact with each other.
Right.
Since 1992, and this is 1996.
Right. So now you're giving me this 1 hour Iron Man match that they killed themselves in. And okay, people could say the fluky ending of how they had to have an overtime and Bret should have won the title. I disagree with that, because how do you end an Iron Man match in a draw? But okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that match was how much build they had. But now you're going to give me the Viking Raiders versus Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, the Undisputed Era, and the Revival. Okay, that's wonderful. That's going to happen at Survivor Series. But you're not going to tell me any of the history that those three teams have. 2 of those teams battled in Japan and Ring of Honor, the Viking Raiders and Undisputed. 2 of those teams all 3 of those teams have been NXT Tag Team Champions, and the Viking Raiders have been undefeated ever since going to NXT. So that should be your build. But that's not going to be the build. All the build's going to be is how the Viking Raiders destroy these jobbers, how Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish are one of the best tag teams in the world. The Revival hate people who do flips. And then we'll get to the pay-per-view, and it's quite possible the Viking Raiders might run over these other 4 guys.
Yes, and that's one of the big problems with modern WWE is and that's why I almost resent NXT's involvement in Survivor Series. And I only say that because WWE has become so much about WWE instead of that star. They become about the brand instead of the star. And I don't want the NXT brand to fall into that with Raw and SmackDown.
Well, see,
I don't want them to fall into that putty, you know.
They're pushing Triple H as the figurehead, which I love, because he really does do great things with NXT.
Oh, absolutely.
Raw doesn't have a figurehead on screen, because they're not going to admit that Paul Heyman is the guy writing Raw. And they're not going to admit that now Bruce Pritchard is the guy writing SmackDown, even though it should have been Eric Bischoff, but then he got fired. Okay, whatever. They're never going to let Triple H go face-to-face with those 2 guys in the ring and go, my team's better than yours. So with Triple H as the figurehead, it adds a lot of questions, because how many guys on the main roster right now came from NXT that are pissed off with their current roster spot and may help NXT win Survivor Series?
Yes.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yes, and I really, honestly, the minute that I'm going to be honest, and I don't watch the Crown Jewel events out of principle.
Well, I fast forward Drew just to see what's going on. I watched the Fiend versus Seth Rollins match in its entirety, but you know,
so much so that Shawn Michaels is my second favorite wrestler of all time.
Okay.
And when he made his return match at Crown Jewel, I have not yet seen it.
You're not missing anything.
That's what I heard.
You're not missing much. You're missing 4 gentlemen who should not have been in the ring with each other. That's all you're missing.
When I read that that Fiend, which I love the Fiend, I've been a Bray Wyatt fan since
best thing on Raw and SmackDown.
Absolutely. And a totally mistreated character. So I'm glad that it's finally getting the treatment it deserves. Just Bray Wyatt in general. But when I read that he beat Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel, the first thought that came to my mind is, damn, I hope Seth Rollins turns on WWE and goes back to NXT.
Right. Right.
You know, to have Rollins back in NXT, and if you could take Rollins and throw him back into NXT, and then, you know, you have Balor back in NXT.
Right. And then you add in Ciampa and Gargano and Cole.
Yeah.
Lee, Riddle, even the young up-and-comer guys like Damian Priest and Dominic Dijakovic, which his real name used to be Dijak in Ring of Honor.
They have to complicate it in the WWE.
They got to make it marketable so they can keep him, you know, copyrighted.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a stacked deck like that, look, NXT's pay-per-views are always better than any Raw or SmackDown pay-per-view. I don't care what anybody says.
NXT puts on the best shows in wrestling.
Without a doubt. I watched TakeOver before WrestleMania, and it was actually a little better than WrestleMania.
Yes.
I'm going to be honest. And that was a 2-hour show versus the 7-hour spectacle.
That's what I was about to say. I didn't have to pack a lunch either. So.
No, exactly. Exactly. But going back to the question that you asked me about this boom in wrestling again, I'm very happy with it. My brain isn't, because I'm watching 6 days worth of wrestling now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, it's more because I also watch MLW and AEW Dark, and then a bunch of other stuff on YouTube.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say I watch a bunch of retro stuff on WWE Network too. So my wife sometimes is like, "Fuck, can we get wrestling off the TV for Christ's sake?"
Exactly. Well, I watch a majority of it on my phone or on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
So TVs are kind of for everybody else, unless it's Raw or SmackDown or NXT. But I love NXT, and I absolutely love NWA Power because it is a throwback to old wrestling. I mean, they don't even have entrance music.
Yeah.
Just walk through the curtain, say their name, and let them destroy whoever they're going to fight, or have it be a real great match, because Nick Aldis is a great champion.
And I'm going to be honest, Arch.
You know,
I'm going to be honest. The past since I'll just say since AEW launched. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
Since AEW launched, every single week, NWA Power is the only show that I watch without fast-forwarding through anything.
Exactly.
And
it's only an hour.
Yes.
It's 1 hour, they pack in like 6 or 7 matches, 5 or 6 decent promos, and then a sit-down interview, too. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. Why can't Raw do that in 2?
Yeah. It's over? Damn, it's over?
Yeah. That's the show I want to be 2 hours long, because with NXT, you get 6 great matches in NXT. You get a great backstage interview. You get a couple of promos, and you get a story that carries over to the next week.
Yes.
So NXT being 2 hours is perfect. NWA Power, I want more. Even if it was an hour and 20 minutes, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
AEW, I think could get... I watch AEW Dark, and I think they do great for the hour that they have. I think they jumped feet first into the ocean and went, shit, with 2 hours, because they didn't need 2 hours to start off with. Nitro was not 2 hours when it first started, and neither was Raw. It was 1 hour every week, and you were busting for more.
Yeah, if you would give me... and I might be mixing up 2 episodes, but I'm just using this as an example. If you would give me the AEW as an example, if you would just give me the an opening match with two of your younger talent, then give me that amazing, the best thing AEW has ever done so far. And again, they're young promotion folks, but the best thing they've done so far is that concession stand brawl.
Right.
That was amazing. And then give me that tag team championship main event.
Right.
That's a show.
Exactly.
That's a show for me. I am
you
good.
Win a 6 or 7 minute women's match and a 6 or 7 minute other match of 2 guys that we know. Give me a familiar face. You know what I mean? Give me a Jack Swagger or whatever her name is, Jake Hagar, versus Dustin Rhodes. I'd be happy.
Yeah,
I wouldn't complain.
Couple promos, couple angles. Then
show me what's going to come up at the pay-per-view. Make a pay-per-view match on the show, so I know what I got to look forward to now.
Yes.
and I'm hooked.
And
But
I'm not hating on AEW. I am
no,
I am
one
get
bit.
I am
I like what they're doing, but
I
it's
am
just it's 2 hours of when I get to hour two, I'm like, well, wait, there's more,
yes.
and the next hour doesn't make sense till I get to the main event.
Yeah, and I'm definitely getting the pay-per-view Saturday.
Yeah,
And I'm definitely giving them a chance. I find that what I watch every week, NXT and NWA are what's sticking out to me right now.
without a doubt. And I don't know if you do, but MLW.
Oh yeah, MLW is great too. I've watched them since the beginning, since Shane Strickland,
Yep.
and yeah, that's a great promotion too. I don't mean
I'll be
to
honest
leave
with
them out.
you. They have a guy as their world champion right now, who's the Samoan, Jonathan Fatu, I think is Jacob Fatu.
Jacob Fatu, yes.
And I want him in WWE so bad because he reminds me of Umaga and the wild Samoans, probably his grandfather and his uncle, because they're all related. But I know WWE would screw him over.
Yeah.
So I'm happy he's where he is.
Yeah, I actually told my brother, not the first time I saw Jacob, but when they did the big cage match beatdown.
War Games.
And yes.
Well, it's called something else now, but yeah, War Games, yeah.
I told my brother, I said, I would love to see Jacob Fatu come to WWE and have a program with a babyface Samoa Joe.
Right.
I think those two guys together could tear. You've never seen really a Samoan feud.
No, because the feud with Roman Reigns kept getting powder caked because one of them would get injured or thrown out. Something bad would happen.
It didn't work.
You look at all. Look, there's 3 Samoans right now in the WWE that are related: Roman Reigns and the Usos.
Mm-hmm.
Bring Jacob in as their muscle, which I know Roman Reigns doesn't need muscle, but he could be the figurehead. If they turned Roman Reigns heel with the Usos and you bring Jacob in as their baby cousin and he's the Umaga, the bulldozer, the guy that goes through, and they target a Samoa Joe, and then they target a Seth Rollins, and then they target a Daniel Bryan. And now they're this, you want to call them the Bloodline like you were, go for it. I have no problem with that. Call them the Samoan Dynasty and give them Paul Heyman as their damn mouthpiece. They don't even need to talk. It would make so much sense, and everybody would go, wow. They take notice, Look at what the Undisputed Era just did on Raw and SmackDown. All they did was walk up and stand on the apron, and everybody went, oh my God, they're here.
Yes. And that's all it takes.
So it would just they don't. But I know what they would do out of Jacob Fatu. They'd bring him in as Umaga's son or whatever. They'd let him be a bulldozer for 2 or 3 months, and then he'd end up losing to someone like Leo Rush, who I'm not knocking. Leo Rush is a great talent, but he'd lose to Leo Rush in a fluky manner, and then he'd be a laughingstock.
Yeah, or even more plausible. You said Leo Rush, but when you said he would lose to, my brain went Ricochet.
Right.
That's not
a great talent is Ricochet.
That's not a knock on Ricochet at all, but that's a knock on like you said, the way WWE would book it.
Right.
You have this monster and this talent that has so much potential, and you're just gonna, for the sake of a laugh, and it wouldn't even be on a fucking pay-per-view. It'd be on like a random Monday Night Raw. And they almost killed the Fiend character at Hell in a Cell because you had an unstoppable monster, a boogeyman, like Kane and The Undertaker used to be. And you stopped the match because Seth Rollins hit a ladder with a sledgehammer. Yeah.
And because he stayed unconscious for 30 seconds, the referee called off the match. But then a minute and a half later, he stood up and beat the crap out of Seth Rollins. Why wasn't the match restarted then?
Yes.
Why wasn't he allowed to be the monster that he was? Seth Rollins made a joke on Twitter afterwards and said, well, maybe Mick Foley and The Undertaker could have used them to stop their match after what happened to Mick Foley all those years ago. No, because Mick Foley wouldn't allow them to stop that match. And The Undertaker definitely wouldn't have let that happen back in the day because you're screwing with my character now.
Yeah, and that's exactly... I saw the same tweet you saw, and the thing I thought when I saw it was that's why The Undertaker and Mick Foley drew, and you don't,
Right.
Seth.
Right.
And I'm not hating Seth Rollins. I think
No.
Seth Rollins is a great wrestler.
Yeah, but he's being buried by the amount of face time he's getting.
And the problem I have with that is, with that tweet in particular, is in their day, in that day and age, the draw was Mankind versus The Undertaker.
They were the final match, right?
And today the draw is WWE featuring Seth Rollins.
Right. Exactly.
And
or Roman Reigns or whoever they're going to make their face.
It's like, don't get too big for your britches, son. And again, I like Seth. I've liked him since he was in ROH.
Exactly. I followed Seth Rollins since his name was Tyler Black, and I watched him on a crappy MTV show called Wrestling Society X.
Absolutely, yes.
And
God damn, that was terrible.
It was terrible, but when he jumped off that tower onto 4 people, I said, this kid is going to be big someday.
Yes.
And then 4 years later, he's in Ring of Honor, and he's their champion, and I went, well, he's going to, I hope he makes it. And then all of a sudden, there he was in NXT, and I went, yep, he's there. Mm-hmm. And I kept always thinking he will be the next Triple H because of his look.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And he sort of is. He is the next Triple H. But you're forcing him down our throat. And that's one thing that WWF, I won't say WWE, WWF did not force anybody down our throat. Mm-hmm. As much as everybody saw Hulk Hogan front and center, to the right of Hulk Hogan was the Ultimate Warrior and the Macho Man.
Well, and that's what I was.
The Undertaker and Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
The tag team division, you know.
Hulk
Hogan was there, but he only went on last.
Well, and if you even Hulk Hogan's autobiography,
mm-hmm.
he talks about as early as 87 or 88.
Right.
Vince was already trying to find my replacement.
Right.
And so the reason that Hulk Hogan until 1992 was the draw was because of Hulk Hogan.
Right.
And then, as I guess I would say, probably mid John Cena run is when we got into this WWE is the. I don't want this to be a WWE bashing session because it's not.
No,
but we're just being honest here as wrestling fans. It became at some point it became about the brand and not the star. Right. And then the problem with that is the management is giving that attitude to the wrestlers, so the wrestlers are taking that attitude to the public.
Right.
And then you have your Seth Rollins tweets. It's like Seth Rollins is like the Donald Trump of wrestling.
Yeah, but it's not just him. There are a lot of wrestlers who take to Twitter and bash fans. Which they're entitled. If you're a heel and you want to stay in character, go for it. They bash the fans. They bash the product. They bash this. They bash the. Mm-hmm. Right now, there's a wrestler in NXT named Jordan Miles.
Yes.
And he's bitching that his T-shirt was racist. And the T-shirt was a black T-shirt with this big red circle, and in the red circle was the name Jordan Miles. And he said that it looked like blackface. When somebody paints their face and puts the red lipstick on, and then the big white teeth come out.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I am not a racist by any shape or form. I don't like when I see people try to use their race, though, to get over in anything. I don't just mean wrestling or any sport, in any walk of life.
Mm-hmm.
And they're racist, they're stuck in their minds, and they're this. And then someone said, well, Jordan, on Twitter, they told him the shirt was changed a month ago. Your new shirt is on sale, and it doesn't look like that anymore. And but it still got released, and he just bitched and moaned. And then he blamed it on Jay Lethal and said Jay Lethal's an Uncle Tom who tried to all he did was kiss ass to get where he is today. Well, Jay Lethal's wrestling in Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor is one of the top promotions, but it's not the WWE or AEW.
Exactly.
So he's still fighting his way to the top. And he's done it through hard work and doing a Macho Man impression in TNA. And it's like this young man who was used to be known as ACH in Ring of Honor and was a fabulous talent is now looking to use his skin color to get over. And it's entitlement because like, how can you say the WWE is racist when 80% of their champions are minority?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Asuka and what's her name?
Kairi Sane.
Kairi Sane are Japanese. Ron Killing's R-Truth is the 24/7 champion.
They really, other than the end of his title reign, I was so happy because I've been such a fan for so many years. Kofi Kingston's title reign is one of the most dedicated things WWE has done in years.
They rewarded him for years of being there and loyal.
I absolutely don't like the way. I don't like the way it ended. I think he should have had a more fighting match.
I agree.
I would have rather seen Bret Hart 1-2-3 Kid 94.
Right. Give me 10, 15 minutes.
Yes, of him trying to overcome the beast and then losing.
Right. He didn't look. You don't have to let Brock Lesnar beat the crap out of him. Let him beat the crap out of Brock Lesnar, and then Brock Lesnar could have just popped up and hit an F5 and ended the match. Okay, yes. But at least gave me 10 minutes of Kofi Kingston trying to chop him down.
Exactly. But other than the end of that reign, reign was a really good reign as in the modern era WWE. That was an amazing reign.
Incredible opponents while he was champion. He beat Daniel Bryan and he beat Randy Orton, and he gave unsuspecting guys title matches. So race had nothing to do with it. That was loyalty.
Exactly.
And then you look at, I'll go back a few years, and I'm going to sound like I'm hating on people because of their, race or religion or what they do. No. A young man who used to work for WWE by the name of Darren Young.
Yes.
The primetime players with Titus O'Neil. Mm-hmm. Not one of the best wrestlers, but he had his moments. Came out as being homosexual. That's fine. I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? He's not doing anything, that is wrong. That's what he chooses to do. That's fine. But then when he finally was let go by the WWE, he admitted that the only reason he did come out in an interview was so they wouldn't fire him during those, cleaning house sessions after WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. Because he knew if he came out as homosexual, he wouldn't be fired because he could always say, well, they only fired me because I admitted I was gay. Right, you understand where I'm going with this?
Yes,
he used he used the one thing he knew he could to not be fired. Same regards with this Jordan Miles guy saying it's racist because he knows now they can't fire him because if they do, it's because they're racist. I'm tired of guys going on. I'm tired of social media and as a whole for anybody going on there to voice an ugly opinion.
Yes, and it is not. That's something. Listeners of the show know this because I have to talk about it because it's a marital thing. But I have another podcast that is not a wrestling podcast called the Motley Soup Podcast.
Okay.
That I host with my beautiful and talented and intelligent and much better than me wife, Kendall.
Okay.
And we talk about. She allows me to go off on my rants about politics and such on that show.
Right.
And that's something we've talked about on that show before is we are not in any, I grew up in an inner city. Like I live in a rural area now, but I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. I grew up in an inner city. I went to a high school with bars on the windows, metal detectors when we went to school. And this is in the 90s. This is how inner city it was. This isn't now. I didn't know color when I grew up.
Right. Nobody did.
My best friends were African American. My best friends were Hispanic. They still are.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
And to be honest, and a lot of people won't, this is the problem with social media. A lot of people in today's era won't admit it. But a lot of my friends that are of color, we have these conversations now, and it's not the same as it once was.
No.
And it's the media. It's social media. It's the fact that, to be honest, social media and the news media nowadays have made politics and
race and religion a for-profit business.
Yes.
A for-ratings business. Let's
Without a doubt.
excite people. They don't want to report the news to us because that's boring.
No, exactly.
So they want to put a bunch of talking heads out screaming at each other. I'm black, you're white. I'm gay, you're straight.
Right.
I'm a middle class.
I identify as a woman, but I'm really a man.
Yes.
But you don't want me to be a woman. Well, no one said I didn't want you to be a woman. No, but it was the way you looked at me. Well, how did I look at you? You know, it's weird, but it's what happens.
It's a sad, it's a silicon sad state of affairs nowadays. And it translates to every business, including wrestling. It becomes a cancer. And,
it does.
And I totally agree with you.
I'll go back a bit to AEW. They're promoting that. They are. Mm-hmm. They promoted it by, Nyla Rose is a fantastic talent, and whether she's a female, obviously now, but she's a female who transitioned from being a man. Mm-hmm. They managed to mention that at every waking moment during her matches. Yes. They managed to mention that whenever they promote her for a match on their Twitter, Instagram, and then you get people who go ahead and leave hate speech as comments because, well, that's what people do. For every 20 people who go, she's wonderful, I love the way that she wrestles, and I hope she wins a championship one day, you're going to have one asshole who's going to go, but she used to be a man. Could she really win the women's title?
Yes, because she's not a man now. She used to be a man. That's the key word, you fucking idiot.
Here's the thing, though, Nate. If I tell you Christmas is 50 days away, right?
Retail's telling me, brother.
Right. And I remind you every day of the week, Christmas is coming. When Christmas finally gets here on December 24th and 25th, you're going to look at me and say, it really don't feel like Christmas. Well, why not? Well, because you reminded me every day.
Exactly.
I'm tired of hearing it. Why do you need to remind me that she's a woman who transitioned from being a man? Mm-hmm. Let her work speak for itself. Let me enjoy her as a wrestler. You understand? And then I'll go forward and make my own assumptions.
And you can make that a part of her story.
Right.
But you don't have to make that the emphasis of her story. As an example, and it may or may not seem disconnected to modern wrestling fans, but I think Archie will agree with me. I'm going to use this person as an example. Okay, Nyla Rose used to be a man, now she's a woman. That's part of her story.
Right.
Ron Simmons had his jersey commemorated at Florida State University. Right. Jim Ross told us, but now he is a badass motherfucking wrestler.
Right.
That's the point. Now he is a badass. I'm going to tell you about his past, but I'm not going to harp on that the whole match.
No, I'm not even going to harp on it the rest of his career. I told you it once. I hope you'll go Google it or read it in a book now and want to find out more about Ron Simmons.
Yes.
But I'm not going to harp on it for the next 6 years of his career. Vader was a football player too. So was Refrigerator Perry, and even though he only wrestled in one match, but they didn't, you know what I mean? There have been plenty of superstars that have come from other sports or other backgrounds, and they don't harp on it as much, or they didn't used to harp on it as much as they do now. Can you imagine if the storyline right now for Rob Van Dam was that he was a pothead? All they mentioned was, and Rob Van Dam just smoked a blunt before he came out to the ring. Rob Van Dam was on High Times magazine. Rob Van Dam has his own version of marijuana that you could buy. How you wouldn't want to look at Rob Van Dam's face anymore, whether you're a pot smoker or not. You'd look and go, well, is that all he does is smoke pot?
Right. Did you see you took me to the side for a minute, but did you see the tweet he put a couple days ago about the wives and the girlfriends?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was so good.
Everything he's saying recently is spot on, though. He's not saying anything wrong.
Yes.
I think he got into some new kind of pot because he became euphoric all of a sudden. He mentioned on TNA or Impact a couple of weeks ago, without me there'd be no Kenny Omega, without me there'd be no Young Bucks, without me. And I'm like, well, you're kind of sort of right, Rob, but you're also like 20 years late because ECW was around in 99.
Yeah.
You know, those guys weren't watching you in 99. They were watching somebody else, you know? But I mean, it's just like, why do we have to have, they had to immediately, the minute Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch got together,
Oh,
not
yeah.
engaged, but together,
I hated
immediately
that.
on television, they're a couple.
I hated that.
Why?
They did so much damage with that, and
But yet didn't use it when it counted, like him, like maybe having the Fiend go and freak Becky Lynch out, or
Right.
anything. You know, you did it with Kane and Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella. It worked great. Why didn't we do it again? You know,
they did such an amazing amount of damage with that because they hurt her character by making her seem a little soft.
right?
That would have been like, in the early days of Stone Cold showing us that he, had a wife and kids or whatever.
Right.
And
Right.
and then they hurt Seth because they completely they made him look like an emasculated bitch.
He was
And-
Mr.
and-
Becky, right?
Yes,
Exactly.
and I'm not at all. I am, folks. I am married to a redhead, and she is
There you go.
she is a strong, independent, intelligent, beautiful woman.
Exactly.
And so I'm not saying emasculated to be a mean thing at all, because my wife,
No.
although she is a strong, independent, beautiful woman, she still likes me to be her man.
Right.
And
Right.
and
They released a shirt that said "The Man's Man," and it was like, really?
it's not good for a professional wrestling character. Seriously.
How about it's not good for? They wouldn't do that in football. Like,
No.
oh, Tom Brady is married to the head cheerleader, and look, she's giving him a kiss as he's walking on the field. No,
Yeah.
you know, that wouldn't work. Baseball, they don't do. Oh well, Don Mattingly was married to my partner, who's an announcer here, and look, she's waving to him. No, they don't involve spouses in other sports. And and then it seems like the minute they got engaged, they stopped mentioning that they were together anymore.
Yeah.
It was like, oh no, we can't mention this because they're going to get married, and then she's off the table, and men won't fantasize about her anymore. That was what the real thought was there. I feel.
And
But
you're
yet
right.
you mentioned it, you killed her character slightly, and then you made him look like a jerk, and then the whole storyline was to get over Lacey Evans and Baron Corbin.
Yeah, which I mean, I've said it a million times on this show. I hate Baron Corbin. I hate him.
I hate Lacey
him.
Evans, but that's another story.
I-
I dislike Baron Corbin. I hate Lacey Evans because I don't feel she's a good wrestler, and I feel she has no character.
I guess I would say I am the same as you, only reversed in that
Right.
I hate Corbin and I dislike Lacey. And that's only because honestly, I was not a big fan of Lacey Evans. And
No.
I'm still not a big fan of Lacey Evans.
No.
But
No.
I went to a WWE house show recently.
Mhm.
It was actually when Corbin was feuding with Rollins.
Okay.
And they had a tables match and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, she came out and it was when she was feuding with Becky.
Mhm.
And I am a fan of Lacey as a promo. I'm not a fan of Lacey as a wrestler. And that's probably because, again, talking about the way they structure TV now, I got to really see at a house show that's not televised Lacey as a promo.
Right.
And I think she would really work as a female valet, but
Or
not
manager,
as,
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
not as a wrestler. She is a heat seeker.
Yes.
She really is on the mic. But as a wrestler, I agree with you. She does nothing for me as a wrestler.
It just her character. I don't know many women who are still stuck in that '60s Southern Belle lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that's what she's coming off as. And then she's got a Southern accent. That's fine. But then when she's on social media, all I see her mention is my daughter and my husband,
Mm-hmm.
and how hard it is for her to be away from them. But then I've heard that people went up to her for autographs, and she used her daughter as an excuse. Oh no, I'm with my child. I can't give you an autograph. It's like you're battle around.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? You're not.
and
You're
that's
nothing endearing.
that's one of the biggest problems with social media and wrestling, is you're trying to play both sides of the aisle.
Right.
And like the stuff that came out a couple of years ago. I don't know if you saw. You probably did, but the stuff that came out a couple of years ago with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns at the convenience store.
Yes.
And it's 2:00 in the morning and they're shitty.
Right.
Well, obviously, any of us are going to be, if we've all worked all day and it's 2:00 in the morning at a convenience store. Fuck, I just want to get my goddamn hand sandwich and go back to the hotel.
Exactly. See,
So, and that's the problem. That's the problem with wrestling. Wrestling mixing with social media is it's a kayfabe industry.
Well, see, all right, now, see, you're going with the kayfabe of wrestling. Yes, I agree with you. But let's look at it from a personal perspective as well. I'll tell you a quick story. A few years back, I had 2 shows on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't really shows, but they were, whatever you want to call them. One was a exercising show called Walking with an Arch. And it was me walking miles a day. And through doing that, in 8 months, I lost 80 pounds.
Well, that's amazing.
Yes. Well, I had to. I wasn't feeling well, so I lost the weight and felt great. And everywhere I went, people who knew me or saw me would walk up, "Hey, it's Walking with an Arch." And I didn't mind it so much when it was just me and my family. But when you're out with, like, friends in public,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a bit nerving because, like, I don't mind saying hi. I'll take a picture. I'm not trying to say I'm a celebrity by any means in the world, but it was, "Hey, and I want to be on the show, and when can I go for a walk with you?" And it's like, how about I gave you like 2 minutes of my time? Why do we need more? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
can we just, you know what I mean? Or message me on Instagram and we'll talk about it there,
It's funny because I can relate to that. Go
Right.
ahead. You go ahead.
Well, and then I started a trivia show, and again, people were coming on, they were enjoying themselves, they were having fun, and then wherever I would go again, "Oh, look, it's the guy who does and I want to be on the show, and I have questions for you, and I have this, and I want to give you this, and I want to," and again, and I'm not even joking with you, Nate, I'd be at a wedding,
Mm-hmm.
and people would approach me, and it would be like during the vows. You know what I mean? We're looking at the bride and groom giving the vow, and here comes this guy next to me. He's like, "Your show is great. Oh, thank you very much. Can I get a picture?" "Yeah, sure." Click. "By the way, I have these questions for you for the show, because I think you asked some great questions, but these would be really stumpers." "Okay, send them to me through Instagram, or here's my email."
Right.
"Well, no, here, I want to give them to you here." Like, can we listen to the bride and groom get married?
I can
Respect them?
Oh yeah, I can totally relate. And again, like I said earlier in the show, I live in a small town.
Right.
And I have 2 podcasts, and one of them is with my wife, who also, she works in banking, but she also works with the public like I do.
Right.
And so I will have people who, because obviously when you're building, and you know this, when you're building a group or you're building a business or you're building a podcast, the first people you start with are local.
Right.
And you build out. So I will have people come up to me at my store when I'm trying to work, when I'm trying to set a planogram or put merchandise out. "I listen to your podcast with your wife. It's great, blah, blah, blah. Can we talk about this? Blah, blah, blah. I want you to talk about this on the podcast." And,
Right.
Look, I'm doing my real job right now. Or if my wife and I are out and about in our small town, "Hey, guys, on your podcast." It's like, oh, my God. And you're not trying to be shitty.
No, you're trying to be friendly, but you can't be uber friendly.
Yes.
You can't make them your best friend overnight, because
you can't
then it
ask
becomes
them
a
to
problem.
sit. You can't ask them, "Hey, would you like to sit down with us at Bob Evans?"
Right. Well, Instagram has a feature where you can now call people, and it's been going on for like a year or 2.
Okay.
You can actually, if you DM them, there's a little phone button, and you can click the button, and it calls them through Instagram. This gentleman called me at 4 a.m.
Oh my.
Now I was up. I was sleeping, but I was up, and I hear this unusual ring coming out of my phone. Pick it up. I see it's an Instagram Messenger call, so I hit the button, and I go, "Hello." He's like, hey, Archie, what's up? Nothing much. What's up with you? He's like, well, I just want to tell you you're doing a great job. I'm like, oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Is it possible I could be on the show sometimes, on the trivia show? I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll tell you what. Send me your schedule, and I'll try and work an episode around so that way you'll be, oh, well, I'm available whenever. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'll DM you or PM you or whatever, and I'll tell you when I'm doing the next show. And could we do an all this kind of show for movies? And could we do? I'm like, listen, I'm gonna be really honest with you.
Now this guy's the fucking producer, right?
Right. So like, I'm gonna be really honest with you. It's 4 a.m. and even though I'm wide awake, I don't want to be on the phone right now. I'm gonna wake my wife or one of my children. Can we maybe discuss this at like tomorrow at like 2? I'm being totally nice.
Right.
They don't want to blow the guy off because then he'll go on social media and blast me. But okay. So he's like, well, no, but I just, and then he turned a total 180 and goes, you don't know who I am or who you're talking to right now. And I went, what? He's like, well, I have over 50,000 followers on Instagram. I'm like, that's wonderful. That's great. I'm like, I hope that when you come on the show, a 10th of them come and watch the show, that your followers want to watch.
Right.
He's like, well, yeah, but if you put me on the show, I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm going to start this conversation over and say, you don't know who you're talking to. I'm a very aggravating person. I get very nervous very quickly, and you're pissing me off right now. So unless you think I'm going to do a show at 4 a.m. for you, you're going to need to call me back in the afternoon or leave me the F alone. Or you're going to have a problem. He's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, here's what I'm going to do. Click. I hung up the phone. I hit the block. I hit block. My brother calls me like 2 days later. He's like, did you block so-and-so? I'm like, yeah. Why? He's like, why? Why would you do that? Like, he called me at 4 a.m. and was bitching and moaning. I didn't know what to tell him. Do you realize he's got 50,000 followers on Instagram? Like, do you really think I give a fuck about that?
Who gives a shit?
I get 200 viewers. I'm happy. I don't need 50,000.
And I really don't give a shit.
I really don't give a shit about
4 in the morning.
And he's like, well, yeah, but I mean, it could have been exposure. I'm like, so wait a minute. I'm like, you think I was trying to make money off of this down the line or something? I'm not charging anybody to be on the show. I have nobody that gives me like, I don't promote anything on the show. I'm like, there's nothing. What did you think was going to happen here? He's like, well, I kind of had aspirations for you to take it to YouTube. And like, wait, now you're my producer? You're going to start telling me where I'm going? You know what? Bye. Hung up on him.
I have had so many people since I started my show
that want to tell you the way to do it.
Yes, that want to be on, and that's why I only honestly, up until you, I only have had my brother and my buddy Kyle as co-hosts. Is
right.
I have so many friends that are wrestling fans and et cetera, but when they want to be on the show or want to be a guest host, then, hey, Nate, I want to be on your show. Okay, cool. When can we do this? And then all of a sudden it's, well, I want to craft your show.
Right.
It's like, well, if you want to craft it, then you should start your own. And I'll be happy to be on it and not craft it for you.
Right. We'll even use my show to do your spin-off to take it to your show.
Yes, absolutely.
Ultimately, though, I stopped doing both when my son my youngest son got a little embarrassed because I guess of the attention I was getting. And his friends began going, hey, yeah, your dad's walking with an arch and your dad does that trivia thing and it's this and that. And he came home one day and he's like, can you stop this now? What do you mean? He's like, well, you lost the weight and you're still losing weight. And I know you're doing great on that. And I don't mean to bother you with that. But he's like, I'm catching bad, press for it. I'm getting bitched at it about it and things. And I literally, I let him go to bed later on that night. And I sat up with my wife, Jane. I'm like, I don't think I could do this anymore. She's like, why? It's fun for you. It's like, it helped you lose 80 pounds. And the trivia show helps you, talk about movies and TV shows the way you want to and whatever. Like, yeah, but you don't understand something. If this is going to negatively affect our children, but also piss me off because these people want to tell me how to run my show and do things this way and that way, it's not fun now. Now it's a job, and I need to get paid if I'm going to be doing it.
Exactly. I need to get paid for a stressor.
You know, if somebody, she's like, well, what do you mean get paid? I'm like, look, if somebody told me we'll give you $100 a week to do each show, $400 both shows, 800 a month, I'd gladly do it because that's extra income. But I'm
Exactly.
not going to let somebody bitch at me because my questions were too hard or too easy, or tell me I didn't really lose weight this way. I literally had somebody tell me, Nate, that I must be on cocaine to lose 80 pounds in 6 months.
For Christ's sake.
That I was probably using some kind of drugs or whatever. And I told her, I'm like, either I need money for this or I need to do this in a more secretive way. Or she's like, so what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm closing my Instagram and I'm reopening a different one with only followers I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not doing this anymore. And needless to say, my son was happy about that. My other kids didn't care because they were old and they didn't really, they're older and they
well,
didn't really care.
that's where I'm at now. Is I started when I was younger. I wanted my ultimate goal, honest to God, when I was in high school, was I wanted to go to broadcast school.
Okay.
And be in radio. And then, and my daughter listens to my podcast, so my beautiful, beautiful daughter, Caitlin, don't take this the wrong way, but my ex-wife got pregnant. Life happened,
Okay.
and Daddy had to choose a career that didn't involve paying a huge tuition.
Right.
And so that's where that ended. And then now she's 20. She goes to Ohio State University. She's going to be a teacher. She's a beautiful, smart, intelligent, wonderful girl.
Amen. That's beautiful.
She proves to me that I raised her right. My son is 17. He has no fucking clue what he wants to do with his life. I love you, son. But he's still a good kid that has given me no drama. For a 17-year-old boy to have given his father no drama yet, that's an accomplishment.
God bless him, because I got three boys that one's 19, one's 18, and the other one is 16. And the 18-year-old is the only one who isn't giving me anyways.
Them boys, I swear.
Yep.
But they are great kids. But they both reached the age where Dad said, "Okay, I wanted to be in radio. That didn't work out, but now we are in the modern era, and I can fucking podcast.
Right.
Whether it makes me money or
now
not.
Now you're the radio.
Yes, I am the radio. Whether it makes me money or not, it's much like the era with you guys. It is it's a project of love.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Hobbies are good, and when you could make them be as fun as possible, that's when they become your ultimate and absolute satisfaction in your life. Because, well, I work a 9 to 5, or in some cases, some people work a 7 to 8 or whatever. They work long hours, and if you can come home and have that escape and that time to do something that release the tension,
yes,
and then no one ends up being a murderer later on in time.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks to people, and we're coming full circle here at the end of the show.
Right.
But thanks to people like you and Pat and Dave and the guys at the Asylum and the guys at the Era, as time goes on, maybe you grow your business. Maybe it is something you can make a living doing.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
That's my point, is these communities and these families on the internet, it's amazing, and I have been so happy to have you on this show.
There's no judgment. There's no one calling anybody out about anything unless it's something we really deem to be crazy or outlandish. You know what I mean?
Like kitchen.
Right. 2,700 for a kitchen sign, with some Hasbros mingled in. I joined these groups. The reason I started wasn't just because I found the wrestling toys in the basement. Mm-hmm. My birthday is September 19th. And 2 years ago, on September 17th, my granddad went in the hospital, my mother's father, and diagnosed with cancer months before that, and given time that, how long he would live. Mm-hmm. And in the same time period as that, and I know this is going to seem funny and people will laugh, and I want them to because I've said it to laugh, Ric Flair also went in the hospital as well. And I looked at my wife at 2 o'clock on September 17th, and I said, if my grandfather and Ric Flair both die at the same time, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. And my wife chuckled and said, you're crazy. And I said, I know I am. And my granddad passed on the 17th at 11:55 in the morning, and I was devastated. I was close to both my grandfathers. One of them was the more tough, brash granddad that would pick you up and throw you in the air and rough you up.
Mm-hmm.
And the other granddad who I watched wrestling with was the more loving, telling you, you could be whatever you want, do what you got to do in life kind of granddad. So I lost my granddad, and birthday sucked that year. I didn't do anything because that was the same day as his funeral. And then I began, muttering around on the internet, and I thought back to what my brother said, join the wrestling pages, the groups for toys and things like that. And that's when it really became an escape, because I was looking at all these toys that I used to have. You know what I mean? It wasn't just wrestling either. I joined a group for He-Man, and I joined a group for G.I. Joes, and a group for Transformers too. And I looked around and I went, wow, this is fun, messaging people, hey, how much is this? Hey, what do you need for this? Hey, what is that? Being new, not knowing what anything was worth, and having to apologize to someone when they told me, 45 for an Owen Hart loose, Hasbro. And going, I'm sorry, I can't afford that. I'll, I didn't mean to waste your time, But then I met all these people, like I said, Petey and Pat and Rick Castronova, David Gold. The first person I ever did my first trade with was Daniel Ariola.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to lie to you what we traded, but I think I gave him a Paul Heyman head and a couple of Hasbro that were junkers. And he gave me 3 or 4 Hasbros that were great and a couple that were junkers. And, that's a memory I'll always have. Another memory that comes to mind, the week before Christmas last year, was 2 weeks before Christmas, Dave Duncan messaged me and said, what's your address? Because I had just moved to upstate New York. And I gave him my address. I said, why? What's up? I didn't win anything from you. Why do you need my address? He's like, don't worry about it. When you get the card in the mail, just be happy. It's a Christmas card I do every year. I was like, okay, thanks, Dave. And a week later, a box showed up on my doorstep. Tiny little box, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, if he sent me a card, why did he put it in a box? And I opened this thing. And as soon as I saw, I'm sure you know what Dave Duncan raps like.
God damn. It takes me a half an hour to...
Man raps better than a store, than an in-box already. You know what I mean? Like a Hungry Man dinner or a box of cereal. It's wrapped. But through this bubble wrap and saran wrap, I saw a blue leg and a red number 2, a yellow number 2. And I unwrapped this thing, and as I continued to unwrap it, and I saw the red number 1 and the red number 3, and I began to get it more out, I began to tear up. And before I finished unwrapping it, I saw there was a note at the bottom, and it said, from Dave Duncan and Patrick Mansonetti, Merry Christmas. We love you for everything you do in the era. And we know you've never had this before, and we wanted to be the ones to give it to you. Merry Christmas. And I finished opening it, and it was a 1, 2, 3 kid Hasbro Lucy.
Oh, wow.
Mint.
Damn.
Mint as can be. And I legitimately, I wasn't just tearing up anymore. I was crying, and my wife looked at me and said, why are you crying so hard over that toy? And I said, because this is one of the ones I never had. Even as a kid, I never had this one. And she said, yeah, but it's a piece of plastic. And I said, no, it's not a piece of plastic. This figure, loose mint like this, goes for $250. That means those 2 men went in their pocket and pulled out $125 a piece and said, we're sending this jerk a figure that he's always wanted. And then they wrote a note and said they wanted to be the ones to give it to me. And she looked at me and said, so that's what you mean when you say during those live streams that Era is family? And I said, yes. This isn't just a Christmas present. This is a keepsake that I will keep for the rest of my life and possibly pass on to grandchildren and so on and so forth. And I thank them immensely. I don't know. I still thank them to this day. But it was little things like that memories like that, that even if tomorrow I said I can't do this anymore, I don't want to be a part of these websites anymore and these groups, I'm done. I wouldn't be able to because I have roots in these groups, Nate.
Yeah, these people become your friends. Literally your friends.
Friends, brothers, uh, you know, tag team partners, whatever you want to call them. They are people that you will go to war for. You know what I mean? If someone, if Patrick Mansonetti told me right now, I'm coming to New Jersey and I'm planning on fighting with someone that I've been doing this, that, or whatever, I would tell him, well, when you get near exit 137, pull off and pick me up on the way.
Yeah.
You know, without question. You know, if Dave Duncan said, I need this from you, I would say, okay, no problem, I'm sending it now. You know, if Alex Lancone said, my kids need this, I would say, well, where and when can I get it to you? You know what I mean? If Petey Gleason needed a pickup or a ride, and I had it in me, I would go get him from Mount Laurel and bring him back down Mount Arlington and bring him to where he needed to be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just them because they're admin. There's other guys. Josh Blevins is my absolute best friend. We talk on a daily basis, and it's not just a wrestling or a, hey, what's up, buddy? I'll just type to him, hey, you suck. And he'll come back with, well, F you. You know what I mean?
And I can tell that just in the interactions you have in...
You know,
yes.
David Gold is another guy that I consider a best friend because of the interactions we've had. It told me about his mom. I've told him about my grandparents and, you know, my grandma being without my granddad, or my dad not feeling well, or me not feeling well. You know, Dave Duncan is a guy that you want to talk sports, talk to Dave Duncan. You want to know a fact about something, a movie or a sport, call Dave Duncan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Mansonetti is one of the brightest, funniest guys I've ever met in my life. And I can honest to God say he does everything with his heart when he does it. You know, there are guys in these groups I'll have lifelong friendships with, sort of like when you were kids, when you met someone for the first time on the street playing and then you never let go of them. You know, you were always, it's sort of, we make a joke. There's that picture of us at WrestleMania and then the Sandlot kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the way that movie came together. You know, everybody was Smalls at one point in time.
Yes.
The way we met, and then we got together and became friends forever.
It's like it's like I was talking about earlier in the show, how I grew up in that inner city.
Right.
And on that street, there were 5 or 6 of us of any nationality and any color. It didn't fucking matter. And even though I live in rural Ohio and my friend Frank Vega lives in San Antonio, Texas, and my friend Martin Tucker still lives in Toledo, and et cetera, et cetera. If one of us needs something, there's no hesitation. We are brothers. A couple of us haven't seen each other in 6-7 years. It doesn't matter. Frank's still my brother.
Exactly.
And if he ever needs anything from me, he's gonna get it. It doesn't matter. You know,
exactly. As long as it's in my power, physically, mentally, or financially, whatever is needed, I'm there, no matter what.
Absolutely. And you can form these types of relationships in these
over
groups.
The weirdest things. Over the weirdest things.
It's
not just toys. It's not just wrestling.
I know you and I had a conversation last night about social media. You know, about how. You know, like with my kids, they're 17 and 20. They have these social, you know, this Snapchat and TikTok or whatever. I don't even have a fucking Snapchat. I'm never going to have one. But one thing I will say about social media is that there are people like you, like Dave, like David Gold, like Nick Francis. I regard you as friends. I really do. And we've never met in person. And that's the one good thing about social media is you can meet people that have a same interests, same values, same...
But then it opens up a door to something else.
Absolutely,
you know,
yes.
It's like, okay, we all like movies, but then we come to find out, well, hey, I like this kind of food, and I like this, and I like to go here, and my wife and I, we'll go to the movies on Tuesday night, and it just opens a door, you know what I mean? The thing that made a lot of our guys in the group laugh, not in a mean way, but chuckle and make the joke, is that I became a granddad at 37 years old. They're like, how is that possible? And I'm like, well, in my nationality, which is Russian, we get married young. You know what I I mean, some of us get married young. My dad married my mom when she was 16 and he was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 38 now. My dad's about to be 55.
Well,
So
I can relate. My mom had me when she was 16. So
there you go.
I'm
Exactly.
40. I'm 41. She's 57.
Right.
You know?
So it's not uncommon. I had my son when I was 18. I was a little older, but he at now 18 he ran away at 18 and he had his baby. And well, how could you let him do that? I'm like, look, you got to understand something. In my way of upbringing, the heart wants what the heart wants, and as long as him and his girl love each other and will stay by each other, and this isn't going to end in an ugly divorce or anything,
Right.
we ain't stopping them. You know what I mean? And because of that, I got my beautiful granddaughter, who I love with all my heart. You know what I mean? And she plays with my wrestling toys. I give them to her, and my wife's like, "You turned her into a tomboy." And she's like, "She's 8 months old. How's she even going to know what she's got in her hand?" You know?
I'm telling you, folks, just from the Facebook post, she's cute as shit. So
Thank you. I appreciate
yes.
that. But and then my other son, who's 18, left a couple months ago to go to California to be in UCLA in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, well, wow, that's two ends of the spectrum. You're a granddad on one end, but then you got a kid. I'm like, yeah, but you guys got to understand something. That kid decided he didn't want to go for the normal route that my family and my upbringing go with and get married young and have kids.
Yes.
He wanted to do something else. Now, my other son, Kobe, going to be 16, is 16, going to be 17. He doesn't know what he wants. Like you said, he doesn't know what he wants yet. He doesn't know, does he want to get married? Does he want to finish school? Does he want to go get a job? He's not sure yet. You know what I mean? But the thing of it is, the guys are all like, well, you're a granddad, and this is ridiculous. And at the same time that I had my granddaughter, Winter, Pat had Dominic, his son.
Mm-hmm.
So, and me and Pat are only year and a half apart. So there's the running joke of, well, Pat's still having kids, but you're on your grandchildren right now. You know what I mean? So it's, it's all different types of people. It doesn't have to be, we all walk to the same drum, all, march to the same drum. We all do it different ways.
It's the beauty of life. I have very dear close friends that I went to high school with that have kids that are 6.
Right.
And I have a daughter that's 20 and a son that's 17 because
there you go. Exactly.
I started early, and they are, as long as you're a good parent. I mean, I started early, but my daughter is going to be next year. She will be the first college graduate in my family's absolute history.
Amazing.
And
that's a beautiful thing.
And it didn't matter when I had her. It mattered how I raised her.
Exactly.
And just like to you, like if she decides in 2 years after she graduates college that she wants to start a family, when I'm 43, okay, all right, I'm ready to be grandpa. Now I will say this: my wife, who I married obviously after my ex-wife, she is 10 years younger than me. So the funny running joke in our house is, I'm 41, my wife is 21, or my wife is 31, and my daughter's about to be 21. But anyway,
no, I understand.
My wife may not like being a 33-year-old grandmother, but I won't mind being a 43-year-old grandfather, and I'll deal with those consequences.
My son and my daughter-in-law walked in when they found out they were going to be parents, and they were terrified about telling me. And I looked at them and I said, why would you be terrified about giving me such amazing news?
Right.
And like, because we've been married such a short time, and, you being a granddad this early, I'm like, what's the big... My granddad was a granddad at, 40 years old. I'm 37, so I'm starting 3 years earlier. What's the difference?
Family's family.
I look at it like this. It gives me more time with her. My granddad passed away at 60, so yes. I was only, you know what I mean? I was only 20 when he went away. I get an extra few years with her if I only go that long. The point being, though, is...
everything's a blessing.
Everything is a blessing. Everything is you can have something small and minuscule, but that's still a blessing because it was given to you for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can have something huge, and it was given to you for a reason. It's what you do with it that you decide, what you're going to end up with. You know what I mean? Because there are people who are given blessings and they end up squandering it. Like somebody might win the lottery for $150 million and be broke tomorrow. They chose to squander their blessing. Okay, fine. They got material possessions instead of money. That's fine. They had it, and they decided to do what they wanted with it. In the same walk of life of everything being a blessing, I look at the era being a blessing, and the rest of these groups, such as Asylum, W Figs, and these other groups, Fandemonium. Nick Hestelo is an amazing guy, and overnight became a very close friend. Um, the reason I look at it as a blessing, because at a time where I was down and out and upset and wanting to mourn, I still mourned, but not as heavily as I would have, because I was able to keep my mind off of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say it until the day I die. If it wasn't for Patrick Mansonetti and Peter Gleason tapping me to be an admin when they opened up the era, I probably would have went away a lot sooner, because I had just moved, and like a week before I moved, Peter Gleason messages me, Nate, and he's like, "So you gonna be around?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're gonna be on the board. You're gonna be doing stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, why?" "Well, we want to give you the ball." Now this was still when it was Golden Arrow, Golden Arrow.
Okay.
And I'm like, "Well, I'm moving. I'm gonna need like a week, 10 days before any of this goes on." I didn't know what he meant by "give me the ball." I just, I knew I couldn't be there 24/7.
Right.
So I move. He said, all right, kid, don't worry about it. Do your thing, and when you're ready, let me know. I'm like, okay. So I move, and I'm mid-move. I'm putting my stuff in my new home, unpacking clothing and beds and TVs and video games and you name it. Patrick Mansonetti messages me. He's like, hey, what's up, Pat? You need to leave Golden Era, but before you do, you need to friend everybody that's in there and bring them over to this new group. Like, okay, what happened? He's like, I'll explain everything in a few minutes. I'm like, okay, no problem. He's like, by the way, you're an admin in the era now. I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you're a mod, but you'll be getting admin soon, but you got to prove that you could be a good mod and whatever. I'm like, why is this happening right now, Pat? I didn't ask to be an admin or a mod. I don't understand. He's like, well, you kept your nose clean. You make good sales. You make you make everybody happy. You're a good guy, and we like the way that you do things. And we need somebody like you on our team. I'm like, okay. So now I'm mid packing and walks my way. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm a mod in the era now. She's like, what the hell does that even mean? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. So okay, business as usual for me. Got in my moved into my new office too. Did whatever I had to do. Pat's explaining everything that happened. And within 2 days, they make me an admin now. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do? They're like, well, you run raffles and events for us when we need be. And if you have anything you want to raffle and whatever, you do go ahead and do it too. As long as you clear it with us first in the regards of, so that way we know what you're doing, just so we can be on board with it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And for the first 2 months, I had nothing to raffle. So I was raffling for them and doing events for them and, having fun and whatever. Then I did my first raffle and it was like, okay, this was a breeze. And then it went from being a fun hobby to being a fun job, but not really a job. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's like if you were in a car with your best friend working and being paid.
Yeah, well, yes, that's exactly what this is for me, the podcasting.
Right.
I am Kyle, one of my co-hosts, is a friend going way back, and obviously my other co-host, Aaron, is my brother.
Right.
So I'm just having fun, sitting around, talking wrestling with my brother and one of my best friends.
Right.
But we're recording it and possibly going to make money one day.
Well, that's how I told I had a podcast a few years ago, and that's how ours started as well. We got together in a house during a snowstorm, and my buddy said, I have my laptop with me, and it has a record feature, and we could record a podcast. I'm like, why would we want to record a podcast? He's like, well, it's fun. I'm like, okay, go ahead, do it. And they looked at me and they said, all right, well, you're going to MC it. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, we want you to do an introduction and, introduce us all and say our name. I'm like, well, what's our name going to be? They're like, just do something on the fly. I'm like, okay. So I literally sat there for like 5 minutes. And I'm thinking of what to say, Nate. And he goes, okay, you ready? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And he hits the play button. 3, 2, 1 goes off. And I literally did my best Road Dogg Jesse James impression and went, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we are the top 5 podcast, and we are here to talk to you about our best and worst of everything. And he literally hit the pause button and went, where the fuck did that come from? And I said, I don't know. And he said, okay, we'll keep it rolling. So we did it, and we put out our first episode. And I think he came back to us like 2 weeks later. We were together again. He's like, that got like 120 views, listens, and things. I'm like, okay, great. He's like, let's do more. I'm like, do we have to? I wasn't into it. And then the more I got into it with them, and every intro became a new wrestling intro. You know what I mean? I did a DX one. I did a rock one. You know, it became more and more fun, like you said. It was just a bunch of friends. And then we forgot that there was a recorder there.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
You know?
By the time you get to like I don't know, even 45 minutes. There are times where I'm recording the show and we're like 45 minutes to an hour into the show and I'm like, fuck, we need to take a break. I've got to pee.
Right.
So I have to remember to go, hey dudes, I got to pee, instead of going, oh, thank you for joining us on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. We'll be right back after this.
Right. Exactly. And I'll never forget this. I'm pretty sure no one I know in the outside of the Arrow world will ever hear this. I hope not. We were recording an episode about our top 5 diners in New Jersey.
Okay.
And it was going great. And we just hit the 1 hour mark. And I guess everybody went euphoric. We forgot the recorder was on. And we began telling personal stories in the podcast. And we just, like, remember when so-and-so did this? And do you remember when he did that at the diner?
Yeah, you're bringing up names that nobody listening is going to know, you know.
Well, see, here's the bad part, though. We realized that 50% of our audience were friends and family. So we're saying these things. And then someone decided to start gossiping. No names will be mentioned here, but he began to, did you hear what so-and-so did with his wife the other day? And he left her and he got another woman and he's possibly getting married and he's doing this. And we went on for 2.5 hours.
Had to cut it all out, didn't you?
Well, we didn't, you know, we all went home, and this friend of mine that was recording for us and being our sound engineer and everything and putting any kind of like sounds we wanted, like a horn honking or anything like that, calls us all one by one, tells us that this happened. We're busting out laughing that we did this. And he stops the episode before we start all that, but then calls us over to his house and plays us the episode of just us rambling and everything we said. And I looked at him and I went, you know this can never get out to the public. You know that this can never be posted anywhere. I don't care who you know. I don't care how much you want to make someone laugh. It needs to be erased. Yeah. And he's like, no, I'm erasing it right now. And I thought I saw him hit the delete button. I come to find out he has it on a flash drive. And he wants us to wait a certain amount of time and every now and then listen to it.
I was going to say, I have, for this show, I have no matter when we start actually recording,
mm-hmm.
I'm recording.
Right.
So the guys
There's
know.
Outtakes.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, absolutely. You know, we'll get drunk during the show while we're recording or whatever, and then after the show, we and I know I've done a couple of bonus ebesodes where we're just watching shit on YouTube. You know.
Right.
Sometimes that's the best stuff. I mean, that's just people being people.
We name names and said things that if anybody ever were to hear them and it got back to the people whose names we named, we might be dead.
Yeah, I was going to say, you might have
Like-
to make it sound like one of those 1990s radio versions of a Snoop Dogg song.
Exactly.
every 5 seconds, it's a brick.
My brother immediately went into fear mode, and we could be sued. And I'm like, forget sued. We're getting beat up. I don't care about a lawsuit right now, because what are they going to take from us? Our podcast?
Yeah, I just don't want to face a sock full of quarters.
Yeah, I don't want to I don't want to walk into a restaurant and here's the guy I talked about, and he goes, "Hey, son of a bitch," and punches me in the face. I don't want to deal with that right now. He's like, what are we going to do? I'm like, we either got to wait one day and find that hard drive or flash drive or whatever, or we need to make sure that we never piss this guy off and he doesn't just release it one day just for the hell of it. So,
That's great.
it's funny. Nate, I enjoyed being on the show. I think we've gone 3 hours.
Yes, sir. I have absolutely been absolutely over the moon about this show. It's fantastic.
I enjoyed every minute of it. I appreciate you having me on and letting me blabber and blabber and blabber. I thank your listeners. If you find me boring in any way, please email me at... No, I'm just joking.
I would like to say to our listeners, just in closing, The Era on Facebook. Search it out. Archie, if they put in... And I don't remember when I searched it out when Pat first gave me the card. If they search The Era, that's going to get them to the page, right?
Yes, it's The Era, and then it's Hasbro's Customs, Figures, Challenges, etc.
Okay, so if you put in The Era Hasbro's, guys, you're going to find it.
It will pop up immediately.
Absolutely, join this group, join this community. These guys are fucking great. I love it. And again, it's not just a money thing. It's not just a figure thing. It's a family thing.
Without a doubt, we are at everybody's disposal, and Nate could tell you because we've messaged each other at 3 and 4 in the morning before. We're there on the clock because if someone has a problem or someone has something they need, we want to make sure we're accessible. And everybody's in a different part of the world, so in a different part of the United States. So we do keep different hours.
Yeah, I was gonna say somebody's always up.
Yeah, someone's always up or doing something crazy on The Era. If anybody wants to look at my custom work or buy anything or just see something that they've never seen before, they could follow me at ArchieNJ37 on Instagram. And on Facebook as well. It's the same name. But I don't post custom work on Facebook. You're just going to see my granddaughter or me.
Well, if you want to see custom work, you can hit me up and I'll show you that picture of that Bobby Heenan. So
Without a doubt. Nate, thank you for having me on. I appreciated every minute of this, my friend.
Thank you for being here, Arch. I really appreciate it, too. And thank you for joining us on another edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. We're going to see you later in the week because Aaron and I are actually... Archie, you might think that... You might, like I do, think this is torture. Aaron and I later this week are going to review WCW Bash at the Beach 2000.
Oh, God.
Fuck me in the ass.
Anything after 99 is horrid.
Yes, so we're doing that for you, our listeners.
Vince Russo, WCW? Oh,
yes,
God.
This is the Hogan one. This is the Hogan, the big speech Russo one where he screws Hogan.
Yeah, where he kneeled down for Jarrett. I hate that one because some people say it was a work. Some people say it was a shoot. Russo says he went off script. I just don't know.
I have an amazing rant coming up on that show about, just on this show, the next show, about work shoots in general. So stay tuned.
Believe me, I'm a loyal listener, and I love every minute when I'm listening to you, so I will definitely be tuning in for that one.
All right. Well, Archie, thank you so very much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you as well, Nate, and I will see you soon.
All right. Thank you, brother. And for the listeners, thank you for joining us on another edition of the We Can't Wrestle podcast.